50 and 12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, a very good morning to you just after 6 o'clock on Saturday, June the 7th. I'm David Bull, and this is Weekend Breakfast. Welcome along. Thanks ever so much for your company this morning. Now, as you would expect, of course, it's Saturday. That means there's great news. And we'll start with this one. It's National Chocolate Ice Cream Day today. Yummy! Now, vanilla may be considered the most popular flavour, but ever since Italians froze hot chocolate, in 1692, chocolate has always been a close contender, and today celebrates that very fact. National Chocolate Ice Cream Day.
And all because of that chocolate ice cream cone. And all because of that chocolate ice cream cone.
You have an amazing record collection, Dave. That's all I can say. Also today, now I like this one, it's National Bubbly Day today. Sparkling wine, affectionately known as bubbly, is the perfect beverage for celebrations because of its cork-popping goodness. Crisp, fruity flavours combined with delightful bubbles to create a celebratory drink, perfect when enjoyed alone, or with appetizers, or a meal, or alone, or alone. Yes, it's National Bubbly Day. Also today, it's National VCR Day. Now, this is a good one. It's a day celebrating the videotapes. Celebrating, though, is simple. You dig up your old VHS recorder. There is one. I've got 2 of these things, these 2 marvellous machines. Dig that up and dig out your tapes and stroll down memory lane. Yeah, National VCR Day.
The pause button's broke on my video.
And on that note, let's move on to this hour's Fascinating Facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
So, on this very day in 1329, Robert I, the Bruce, King of Scotland, died. He earned a place in Scottish history for his legendary victory over the English at Bannockburn in 1314. This is a good one. On this day in 1761, the birth of John Rennie. Now, who was he? He was a Scottish civil engineer and designer of London Bridge. And on this day in 1778, the birth of George Brian Brummel, commonly known as Beau Brummel. Of course, he was an iconic figure in Regency England. He's credited with introducing and establishing as fashion the modern men's suit worn with a tie. He claimed, wait for this, it took him 5 hours to get dressed and recommended that all boots should be polished with champagne. So there you have it. That happened on this day in 1778, and those are this hour's Fascinating Facts.
It's the David Bull Weekend. Come on and share. With peers alongside, no room for fear. Fascination, laughter, we dance and swear.
Well, a very good morning morning to you, 5 minutes past 6 on Saturday, June the 7th. Well, who could be better to be here this morning than a man who does polish his boots with champagne? Of course, I'm talking about Piers Pottinger, the political commentator. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Do you polish your boots with champagne?
No, I don't. I use old Kiwi boot polish.
It's good, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
The old stuff is the best.
Do you use the stiff brush?
I do.
Yes,
I do.
And then you have a
yes.
softer brush?
Yes.
Yes.
And then a cloth to just buff it.
Do you think standards have dropped in this country?
Yeah, well, if you go on the tube and you look down at people's feet, most people are wearing trainers.
It's very true, actually. I was taught years ago that if you go into an event or a meeting, people look at your watch and your shoes.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
I think that is true, yes. I never wear a watch. I've never worn a watch.
Really?
And no.
How do you know what time it is?
I just sort of, you get used to it.
You just know.
And look at other people's watches.
Fair enough. Do you use a phone, though?
Yes, I do.
Right,
yes. Yeah.
OK.
Yeah.
I kind of feel lost without a watch.
Yeah, I know. I like them. I think they're a nice watch like yours, very elegant.
Well, thank you.
But no, I don't. I get by.
This is actually a cheaper watch than it looks, but I bought it on a cruise ship. Should we just talk about VHS recorders? Because it really got me thinking back to my youth, of course, because I remember when the VCR came in, it was absolutely revolutionary.
Yes.
That you could put a tape in, you could watch whatever you wanted at any time of the day or night. The video cassette recorder or video recorder, an electromechanical device that records analog audio and analog video from a broadcast television or other AV sources, and then obviously you can play back that recording at a time that suits you. It's fascinating, this, because it was introduced back in 1956, the original VCR, which I didn't know.
No.
Amplex introduced something called a quadruplex videotape professional broadcast standard format. It wasn't cheap. It was $50,000 when it came in, which would be the equivalent today of $578,000. So obviously didn't exactly take off. Then in 1959, Toshiba introduced a new method of recording called a helical scan. It was first implemented in reel-to-reel videotape recorders, later used in cassette tapes. It wasn't until 1963 that Philips got involved. Then Telcan, which was called Television in a Can, which was produced in Nottingham, that then came onto the market. It was £1,337, which is the equivalent today of 35,400. I mean, imagine going out and spending 35 grand on a video recorder. It was very expensive. It could only record for 20 minutes at a time. And then it really was in the late 60s, 69 and 1970, which is kind of where I began life on this planet, that Philips developed a home video cassette format specially for television. And from there, of course, in the 80s, this is where it absolutely took off.
Yeah, it was great. But initially, I remember it being very frustrated, because every time I set the thing to record, I'd come back and find something different on it. It was a combination of my incompetence,
yes,
but also I finally discovered what the real problem was when I was sitting watching the television, and our golden retriever came into the room, went up to the machine and started tapping it with its paw. So it had been interfering.
Right, so it didn't want to watch the programmes.
The smell. It liked the smell that came out of the machine.
How interesting. So also there was a big battle that went on at that time between VHS and Betamax.
Absolutely.
Wasn't there?
Yes.
But actually, I think, just thinking back, Betamax was a much better format.
Yes.
I believe, because one of the things with VHS was that the picture quality deteriorated every single time you played it. And very quickly indeed. My understanding was that Betamax was a better format. They lost the sort of advertising on the side, you know, essentially, which was the proponent of which one would win out. But having then worked in television many years later, we were filming at that point on Beta SP and Beta SX, which are professional format, and that was much more similar to the Beta Max.
Yes, yes. No, I think you're absolutely right. The Beta Max was better quality, but it lost the battle, and sometimes happens.
Well, so I went and took a picture of all my VHS tapes, which I think we've got. Have we got a picture of all the VHS tapes that I can just show you? So here they are. This is in my attic, and these are. There are two of these, but these are everything, when I started in television, gosh, nearly 30 years ago, of course, we got everything back on VHS, and you can see things like Watchdog Health Show, which I presented there, but everything I've ever done, the holiday programme and so on, I've got absolutely buckets of these things sitting at home.
Yeah.
But I don't know what to do, but what do I do with them?
Well, can't you convert them onto DVD?
You can. Well, I've actually put them onto some sort of digital format, so at least I have them.
Yes, well, I think that's the answer.
But then do I throw the tapes away?
Well, you don't really want to, do you?
No.
Because, I mean, it's rather like the old projector that you can still find in antique shops. And I can remember sitting round on a Sunday afternoon with my father getting the projector out and showing us very, very dull films of boring holidays in a very wet Scottish island.
Sounds lovely.
Yes.
Sounds lovely. Piers, thanks for the moment. Let's move on and talk about what's happening in the papers this morning. It's actually a very busy day this morning. Let's start with the Daily Telegraph. Fears over migrants are form of terrorism. This is really an extraordinary story and something we talk about a great deal. Even Keir Starmer was talking about an island of strangers, wasn't he, earlier on and a few weeks ago? And I think people are rightfully worried about what mass migration is doing to this country. Let me just tell you what this story says. Concern about mass migration is, and I quote, a terrorist ideology that requires intervention by the government's anti-radicalisation prevent programme. This is according to official documents. An online training course hosted by the government's website for Prevent lists cultural nationalism as a belief that could lead to an individual being referred to the de-radicalisation scheme. Read on. This encompasses a conviction that Western culture is under threat from mass migration. I think most people in this country would agree with that they think that actually the unfettered immigration into this country is changing this country beyond belief. And a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups is also undermining the country. I would agree with that too. Now, clearly, I need to be referred to Prevent, according to this.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely insane, this. The idea you can get locked up for being concerned about too many people coming into this small island of ours, which is already overcrowded. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it shows, actually, this is very political, and the problem is that our civil service has become so politicised. This started under Tony Blair,
didn't it?
And it is now so politicised that this sort of thing creeps in, and before you know it, if you don't agree with their left-wing, rather pathetic views on some issues, they'll lock you up.
And this is the real worry. Of course, the thing is, this is what people are saying the whole time. We will talk about it later, the rise of certain political parties, because people are saying free speech is under threat in this country. Yeah. And I think they are right to think that.
They are, yes. And it's clear day by day. We see it all the time. And it's very worrying. And, I mean, even Donald Trump, for once, is right about the fact that free speech in this country is under threat. And here's another example of it.
It goes on in the copy to talk about this, if you take this at the way it is meant, then even Keir Starmer himself would be guilty and referred to Prevent. Robert Jenrick, who's obviously been outspoken as well. Lord Young, the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, has written to Yvette Cooper saying, you need to look at this urgently and reclassify it. I mean, there will be people at home thinking, hang on a minute, this has gone far too far. I need to be able to talk about the country is changing beyond belief. We have had mass migration into this country, and I mentioned it last week, and in fact this comes on the back of Sarah Pochin and the Burqa debate, which we'll talk about later as well. But she said, and that is what people are saying, I do not recognise this country. There is no cultural integration, and if you want to stay there in your silo, that is not good for society.
No, but also this sort of thing is actually more divisive. It's more damaging. It actually it fuels the extreme element of some parts of society rather than bring it together. It's actually a very dangerous route to start following. I mean, it's got so bad in some parts. I had heard a conversation the other day which I really couldn't believe. It was two rather left-wing people talking to each other, and they agreed that British men who wore white shirts were racist.
What?
Yes.
Why?
Because the white shirt.
Oh, for goodness
sake.
sake.
I know. You think, And I thought, this can't be a conversation for real, and it was.
Yeah.
And it shows you how far this has gone. We've got to stop this.
We do, and I think Lord Young is right. Now, he goes further to say that actually, if you are referred to Prevent, and I can see that happening, people might have a conversation, someone overhears it, a do-gooder, you get reported, you then end up on Prevent. He says you could face serious, long-lasting consequences, and that would involve your education, employment, and public reputation. That data remains on your record, can be looked at by various intelligence agencies as well, including MI5, MI6, the Home Office, the Border Force, HMRC. Even the Charity Commission can then see that you were referred to Prevent merely because you said, I don't like the way the country is changing.
Yeah. I mean, that's how serious it is. And it's rather like when I was a child, we were told at school that if you joined the Communist Party, you would be a marked person for life and you wouldn't be able to get a job and all these things. It was a sort of, it was fear they were using. This is the same sort of thing. It's absolutely outrageous.
So what do you make of this? It goes further to say that cultural nationalism has been classified as a subcategory of extreme right-wing terrorist ideology. Even mainstream right-of-centre beliefs risk being treated as ideologically suspect. Cultural nationalism is not extremely right-wing.
No. I mean, what's wrong with being nationalist?
Or proud.
Or proud of your country. Most countries around the world, the people are quite keen on it. I mean, we have a national anthem which people sing proudly all over the country. I'm glad to say still. What's wrong with that? And I mean, whoever wrote that is some left-wing nerd in some Whitehall back office, and this has suddenly become almost law, and it's really worrying.
It is really worrying, and of course this comes on the back of all of those cases. For example, Julian Fuchs, the retired police officer, arrested and detained over a social media post. He talked about anti-Semitism, of course, and then suddenly the police arrived. Alison Pearson, that very well-known Telegraph journalist, of course, she was questioned over something she wrote on X. And then also Hamid Karzai, who was fined, obviously, for burning a Quran. We have to push back on this, because if we don't, then there is going to be a march towards ever more draconian legislation saying to people what you can and can't do. The whole point of Britain is that you should be free to have those conversations in public, because actually that is very healthy. The minute you say no, it drives it underground.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a fundamental freedom of speech, and the moment we stop it and allow the police to decide what people are saying, I mean, this is madness. This is something that, I mean, it is George Orwell territory. It is very, very worrying, and the police should not be doing this. They're not actually trained or educated enough to decide these issues about what people are saying. They should be concentrating on things like real crime, violent crime, burglary, theft, all of these things that the police seem to be actually not solving. We read all the time about how all these crimes go unsolved, but yet they can still send six officers round to an old age pensioner who used to be a special constable to arrest him for saying something on Twitter. For goodness sake, this is crazy.
I mean, and obviously many of those frontline police officers, we've talked about this a great deal, are very young. They haven't had the training, and obviously they're going by the book. But clearly the problem is higher up, isn't it? The fact is there are diktats coming down from on high that someone, as you say, a big lefty in an ivory tower in Whitehall has written, and clearly someone in the police needs to push back and say, the chief constable, for example, to say, this is totally unacceptable.
This is not what the police is for. The police is not set up to do this. It's not some sort of political monitoring organisation, which is what it's turned into.
Correct.
It's absolutely insane.
It is insane. Can I just ask you, and I wasn't on air actually, what did you think of Sarah Pochin's speech, where she talked about other countries that have banned the burqa? The reason I'm asking that, obviously, is that we're talking here about a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups. Did you think the question was outrageous?
No, I don't, because it is true. I mean, it is. You don't see the. You know, we are forced literally forced to talk about diversity the whole time. But you don't see other people on other sides and other faiths talking about it. I mean, the Church of England, for such as it is, rudderless and leaderless, but at least it's probably the most compassionate, tolerant church in the world. I'm afraid it's very hard to say that about the Muslim faith. In fact, some of their diktats are deliberately hostile towards all other religions, which is very worrying. And I think once you start giving in to one particular religion over another, you're getting into dangerous territory again. And I'm all for tolerance, but I mean, if people are going to walk around completely camouflaged, it causes problems in our society.
Well, I would agree completely, and of course it shows a lack of integration, doesn't it?
Does.
The fact is you don't have any commonality with those people if you are dressed like that. Let's move on to the Daily Express now. The front page of the Daily Express says, Kemi, Britain is being mugged in asylum claims mess. I wonder, where has Kemi Badenoch been? This is something we've talked about a great deal. She has declared war on activist judges at home and abroad, saying Britain is being mugged, a broken legal system which has allowed sex offenders to avoid deportation, eco-fanatics to block roads and terrorists to walk free. This is what she said. We will bring an end to lawfare, which is turning the UK into the world's softest touch for asylum seekers. Here's the killer line. This is likely to mean leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. So, Reform UK, Nigel Farage, very clear, we are leaving the European Court of Human Rights. We are a grown-up democracy. We can decide which people can stay into this country. Kemi Badenoch very much on the fence here. She's commissioned this review, hasn't she? And I was trying to work that out in my head. Has she done this so she can then say, I've appointed this independent review. When they report back, I will then accept those findings in full, and therefore that forms the basis of your policy, rather than actually having conviction and saying we need to leave?
Yeah, I mean, she's doing what I think is commonly called passing the buck.
Yes. I think that's right.
I mean, what she actually ought to be doing is, I mean, she's had nearly a year now. We ought to have some understanding of her values, the party's values, its principles and its vision. We have none of that. And I'm afraid this is, I mean, she's making old arguments that we all know about. And as you've quite rightly said, Reform have made it very clear what they would do. And actually, many other European countries now have written, there was a letter last week, I think, to the European Court of Justice saying, we're not happy with some of this and we want change. And the European Court itself has said, oh yeah, well, we're sort of open to change, because they realise that through some of their left-wing judges opining in areas they really have no right to, it's causing trouble in not just here, but in all over Europe, strangely enough.
Very much so. And this is Alain Berset, who is the Secretary-General of the Council of Europe, said there should be no taboo about changing the rules. It's all bluster. They will never change the rules.
No, they don't want to.
They don't want to.
Because they want to rule us.
Yes.
And, I mean, we want to rule our own destiny.
But do you not think this is a big problem? Because actually, I think that is what is driving people to Reform UK, is the clarity of policy. We're leaving the ECHR. If you look at the Conservatives, even my friends who are the staunchest Conservatives are saying, I don't know where Kemi Badenoch sits, I don't know what the policies are. Here you are with another policy, it is likely we leave the ECHR. That is not good enough. We're a year in.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's too... I mean, she is really so far behind the curve, and it shows in the results she's getting in elections.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the Conservative Party, I'm sad to say, is just going backwards at the moment,
I mean,
and
also,
very rapidly.
But look at that result in Hamilton. I mean, 6% of the vote. I mean, that's shocking.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And mind you, the Lib Dems, who are normally quite strong in Scotland, only got 2% of the vote. They should be a little concerned themselves.
They should. I mean, she's also gone further to say we would also consider a Trump-style travel ban. This is after Donald Trump obviously announced a ban on travellers to the US from 12 countries. But again, there's no meat on the bone here.
No. I mean, she She's failing. She's got such an open goal with the mess this government is causing in this country. I mean, we are teetering on the verge of bankruptcy, in my view, and I would be unsurprised if the IMF were called in next year to sort out the mess Rachel Reeves has caused us. I mean, Reeves and Starmer make Reeves and Mortimer look kind of intelligent and sensible.
They do. In fact, I prefer them in charge.
I would,
yes.
At least their absurdity is funny.
Yeah, and of course the spending review is going to be an absolute shambles,
disaster.
Isn't it? The whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, Wednesday we're going to get the automaton Reeves. I wonder if she's going to have...
Working people, 22 billion hole.
Yeah, well, she's going to pick some factory and have some helpless workers standing behind her looking bored out of their mind.
That is the most priceless thing I've seen in a long time. That poor bloke who was all he wanted to do was build a bus, and he gets shoved behind Rachel Reeves, and honestly, we'll show you later, but there's a brilliant montage of everything, and he starts by sort of shrugging and then rolling his eyes, doesn't he? And he looks like he's desperate to be anywhere but there.
Exactly, yeah, it's very funny.
It's
and
very
also
funny.
There's a wonderful man on the other side who's got his arms very firmly folded while everyone else is sort of reluctantly clapping very, very lightly over her arrival, and he's just standing there like this saying, when can I have my coffee break?
Well, right. And of course the thing is, when you put those things together, and obviously there would be very junior press officers who would have said, come together, gather around the Chancellor, and of course that we saw the result of it. But that man is now a star, and in fact people were saying online, I'm going to buy him a beer. Can we get him a beer for the rest of his life, because he basically entertained us so much. Well, we're going to be talking about the spending review. Thanks, Piers, for the moment. We're going to be speaking about the spending review. One of the big winners will be the NHS. We are being told that Keir Starmer is going to give the NHS another £30 billion. That is going to take it over 200 billion quid. We already spend 11.7% of GDP on the NHS. Our outcomes are pretty appalling when you compare them with the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. And the question I want to ask you this morning is investing 30 billion into the NHS the most effective use of public funds? Is it going to touch the sides? The number 0344 499 1000. Those calls charged at the national rate. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well at talkTV. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about why they're telling you not to go to A&E as well, and also the DIY Ozempic sellers putting lives at risk. That's all still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Keir Starmer himself in the last week has talked about this country being an island of strangers. There's no better way to start to change that than to get rid of such items like a burqa, which is so distinctive and so divisive, and actually quite a threatening thing for British people to pass on the street. I was a magistrate for 20 years, Kevin. If anybody had walked into my courts wearing such an item, proceedings would have been stopped until the item was removed.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 6:31 already on Saturday, June the 7th. I'm joined by Piers Pottinger, political commentator, who wants to tell you about some birthdays this morning, don't you?
Yeah, it's happy birthday to Sir Tom Jones, 85.
Youngster.
Liam Neeson, who hasn't been taken from us yet, is 73.
Oh, he is young.
Millicent Martin, who some viewers and listeners will remember from That Was the Week That Was. She's 91.
Whoa, very good.
And the great film director, James Ivory, who half of obviously Merchant Ivory films, he's 97. So he and Clint Eastwood still going strong.
I wonder what their secret is.
I don't know. Well, with Ivory, I think it's curry. He's very keen on
is that
curry.
Right?
Oh, yes.
Riotous living, I say.
I would say
that's
so.
my secret. Let's move on. Lots of messages coming in. David, if Conservative voters in Hamilton had voted for reform would have won. So that confirms a vote for the Conservatives is a vote for Labour. That's Francis in Sussex. Thanks very much for that. Sharon Miller, one of our regulars, good morning to you. Why is Badenoch now deciding to copy Trump? It's an interesting point, actually. I asked about Sarah Pochin as well and about that question and whether it was appropriate to ask that question. I thought it was pretty punchy as your first ever question. Good morning, David. Reese Sarah Pochin. This is Brendan Silver, one of our regulars. Good morning, Brendan. Read this burqa ban question. Sarah has clearly said she was asking a question relevant to the concerns of her constituents. Yes, it came in from a constituent, that much I know. As a working class white heterosexual male, if I told my missus what to wear or what she could or could not do, I would be vilified. The burqa is anti-Western, anti-liberal, misogynistic and oppressive, therefore anti-British. Well done, Sarah. Brendan, thank you very much. Also, I'm asking this morning, the government is about, and we'll talk about this now, but the government is going to spend 30 billion quid. They believe, another 30 billion quid. They believe that this is the panacea to the NHS's woes. Another 30 billion, that takes us over 200 billion quid into the NHS. So I'm asking this morning, is investing 30 billion... I don't know where all the money's coming from either, by the way. But anyway, is investing 30 billion into the NHS the most effective use of public funds? The number 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. I might think that the 30 billion goes in at the top and then it leaches out of the side and no one sees it when it reaches a patient care level. This one, Mike in Erith, good morning to you. No amount of money, David, will fix the NHS. It needs restructuring too, from top to bottom. The nurses are doing a great job, but their shifts leave them exhausted. They need an oil industry type roster, a week of days, a week off and a week of nights. That's certainly how it used to be, and this is absolutely pithy. They are top heavy in management. They always have been. It's just got much, much worse. Joanna in Salisbury, good morning, David. 30 billion for the NHS sounds like another round of bottomless pay raises. I thought Wes Streeting was getting rid of all those quangos. Let's talk about that now, Piers. Keir Starmer says he is going to stake his political fortunes on the NHS. He knows that this... Right, in terms of people's priorities, the NHS has always ranked very highly in the way that people vote. It is seen as a national institution and national treasure. That being said, and having worked in it, It doesn't do what it's meant to do. It is far too large. It's too bureaucratic. Too much money goes in at the top. There are far too many levels of management, in my humble opinion. He's going to give them 30 billion quid at the expense of other public services. This is in the spending review. Now, services from police to councils will be squeezed as the health budget grows more than twice as fast as overall spending, and obviously will lead to painful compromises elsewhere. Now, the health chiefs are already pushing back, saying, well, it's not enough money. It falls short of past trends, and a long-term workforce plan may not be enough for Starmer's ambition to turn around the NHS by bringing down those waiting times and moving care closer to home. He has promised, the Prime Minister, to turbocharge delivery. He is deeply worried about the rise of reform. He's worried that the country looks like it's falling apart. He is worried that patients are not getting the care that they need. And we've seen those terrible, terrible scenes where you've got elderly people on trolleys, which are deeply uncomfortable, in corridors where no one can look after them properly. And they even had to put oxygen points into the corridors to make sure that the patients got oxygen. I mean, the whole thing is shambolic.
Of course it is. It's third world country stuff. And the idea that just throwing more and more money, and incidentally, it's our money, it's the taxpayers' money, it's the biggest share of everyone's tax goes to the NHS. It's 1.4 million people. It's one of the third or fourth largest organisation in the world. 48% of the employees, 48% are non-medical. Now, what does that tell you?
That's a good stat.
And the real problem is that even though Wes Streeting seems to be one of the more intelligent of this shambolic government, he is made the terrible mistake of thinking that it's his job to run the National Health Service. It's no government's job to run anything. It's to decide policy, and that's what they should be doing. This government has no experience in management at all.
No.
And how can they run one of the biggest organisations in the world with no management experience?
I mean,
the answer is they can't.
They can't.
And,
it's the
and
third
simply
largest.
just saying, we'll give them all the money they want, let's just throw money at them, they think that makes it happen.
But
It doesn't.
you see, I know this better than anyone. I think it needs radical reform.
Yeah.
But to do that could be politically toxic, although I get the sense that actually people are changing. They know that actually the service is not good enough.
I think everyone can see the pressure that the NHS is under. It's visible. You only need to walk into your nearest hospital to see for yourself. The moment you arrive, you can see this is an organisation creaking and almost collapsing, and it came very, very close to it. I mean, if we had another pandemic, would it survive? I don't know. But I do think that what we need to do is actually, what I would still like to see is a royal commission on the NHS, have a really, for once, I would have a proper but a serious review into it from a really proper body of people who are going to take time to look at this and restructure it. It needs a new funding principle. It needs total restructuring by people who know what they're doing and are qualified to do it, not a bunch of socialists whose only experience in running anything is their local branch of their trade union.
It's a brilliant point, and of course the elephant in the room is social care, because no one has tackled social care.
No.
And we have a huge problem with bed blockers in NHS hospitals, because
which is only going to get worse.
Which is going to get worse as you have an increasingly ageing population. So you need to solve that first and foremost. The Labour government also has this sort of aversion to, I mean, they're increasingly doing it, but to having private sector involvement.
Yeah.
Now, I went to have a procedure which was done on the NHS, and it was done in a private clinic as part of the NHS.
Yes.
And I was there less than 3 minutes before I was seen. The operation took place. It was 12 minutes later, I was out. I said to the surgeon, why do you work here and not in the NHS? And he said, I can see 3 times as many patients. They're satisfied with the service. I don't have the management and the bureaucracy. And for me, that was absolutely fascinating, that if you strip away all the bureaucracy and management and all of the stuff that is slowing down the clinicians, they're happier, the patients are happier, throughput is faster.
Well, I'm still of a generation who can remember going to see our local GP, and he would actually look at you examine you, maybe fix a cut himself, stitch something up. I mean, GPs now, what do? They spend their lives in front of a computer screen. And if you go to any hospital, everyone's on a computer. God help us, by the way, if there's a cyber attack on our National Health Service.
It's a brilliant point, that, actually, because certainly when I graduated and in general practice, we would remove lumps and bumps. That's all gone.
Yeah, no one does. They don't actually treat you for anything. It's and even I mean, why don't all GP surgeries have X-ray machines, have ultrasound scanners, the very basic level of scanning and blood tests? They should be able. It's not that difficult, and yet. The moment you need anything done, they say you've got to go to A&E. And one of the biggest problems with A&E is GPs sending people there when they should be helping sort it out themselves.
I mean, it's interesting. The Department of Health has said the day-to-day budget will increase by 2.8%. That is the cash increase of 30 billion we've spoken about, 17 billion in real terms. The other article that I looked at, which is the right thing to do, this was yesterday, actually. The walking wounded will be told to stay away from A&E in the biggest shake-up since the NHS was founded. This is what you're alluding to, where Streeting says this will bring the health service out of the dark ages. So essentially what they want to do is to build a network of 40 same-day emergency care and urgent treatment centres. And pretty much what they are outlining is exactly what you've said, and something that I wrote many, many years ago, which is these GP practices are in buildings which are unfit for purpose, where all they're doing is they're sending off forms, and then you request blood tests, and then you have to go and you get the phlebotomist to take the blood. Then the blood disappears off. You don't see the results for 2 weeks, by which time you're probably dead. So none of that makes any sense.
Yeah.
What we need to do, I am very, very passionate about, is you need to build these much bigger centres, which I've seen in the United States. You go in one door, you have your blood test, you get your X-ray, you get your results, and then you leave through another door.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think what I don't understand is where this number 40 has come from. Why 40? And where are they going to be put?
Well, that's a very good question.
And also, how much are they going to cost?
450 million.
And how long will it take to build them? And when will they actually be, you know, I think, again, this is sort of, sounds like a good idea, but it's just, it's tinkering around rather than actually looking at the overall picture and restructuring it, which it is clearly needs.
But, I mean, do you think that's politically toxic?
I don't think it's anything like as toxic as it used to be, because I think most people in this country now realise, as I said, it's under great pressure, throwing more and more money at it and putting our taxes up higher and higher and higher to pay for it, while it just gets worse, isn't actually going to achieve anything. No. You need to sit down and resolve this properly and not knee-jerk and tinker and trying to do small populist things you think are going to make you vote Labour. It shouldn't be about voting for anyone. Of course it shouldn't. This should be about the health of this country.
But you see, I'd like to depoliticise it completely, take it out of the remit of politicians, and you have a 20-year plan. One other thing I just want to throw into that, of course, Ara Darzi, if you remember, he reported back in September, he said the NHS is in a critical condition. It must reform or die. Ara taught me, and he is absolutely on the money there. The other thing we need to throw in, of course, is the potential for doctor strikes.
Yes, well, we've got them coming up. Yeah. The resident doctors, because they don't like being called junior. And then, of course, the nurses are implying that if the doctors strike, so will they.
I mean, it's game over, isn't it, when that happens?
They're talking about a 30% pay rise.
Yeah.
I mean, these, of course, the problem is the BMA is now run by extreme left-wing socialist people who are far from being cultural nationalists. They're the absolute reverse. They want to do the most damage to this country. Those are the people I'd lock up, personally.
Well, I left the BMA as a result of the way they were carrying on. So we'll continue our conversation after this break. I want to talk about this DIY Ozempic jabs that are making it to market and why they are so dangerous. And also, Russia is already at war with Britain. The US is no longer a reliable ally, according to one commentator. We'll discuss that after this break. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:46 on Saturday, June the 7th. I'm joined by Piers Pottinger, political commentator this morning. Lots of messages coming in. I'm asking this morning, Keir Starmer chucking another 30 billion quid of your money at the NHS. Is that the most effective use of public funds? Given that we have the spending review coming up, let me know your thoughts, please. Also, give us a call about your experiences in the NHS. 0344 499 1000. Good and bad, please, because when it's good, it can be great. And when it's bad, it can be truly shocking. The text, you can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can also message us on X as well, at talkTV. Dan in Kent, one of our regulars. Good morning, Dan. I hate to say it, David, but the NHS needs to be privatised. It was fantastic last century, but now it's being abused by huge migration and encouraging migration. It is a sad state of affairs, but there it is. 41% of our spending is the NHS. 41!
Yeah. Yeah,
that's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is.
Isn't it?
It is. It's phenomenal.
Good morning, Dr. David and Piers. This is Kate in Chesterfield. Good morning to you. If we stopped being the International Health Service, we wouldn't have to keep throwing money at it. That's from Kate. We do back bill. So if you come here as a foreign national, we do back bill your country. But whether they get paid, I mean, it's another thing.
But you see, I would levy all those people who come over for private medicine here. If they put a small tax on every procedure, every consultation.
Well, like 100 quid?
Yeah, which these are wealthy people coming from the Gulf states particularly, and they come and flood our private health service, but we get nothing out of that. And what we should do is tax them for that. And they could easily afford it. It wouldn't stop them coming.
It wouldn't.
It wouldn't affect the business, but we could raise hundreds of millions of pounds every year.
No one's ever said that.
No one's ever done that. I don't know why.
Because no one's ever told me about it. Now I will sit and ruminate about that. That's very intriguing. Let's talk about Ozempic, though. This is a big article this morning in the Daily Mail. This is front page of the Daily Mail. Expose the DIY fat jab dealers. Cheap do-it-yourself Ozempic is being sold across Britain in a booming black market, which is putting lives at risk. This is according to a Daily Mail investigation. So, as we know, lots of people taking these weight loss drugs, they're being used off-label to lose weight, and some of the results are quite frankly spectacular. What these people are doing is supplying the active ingredient found in the genuine weight loss jabs and then providing instructions on how to mix it yourself and then inject it. And they're being targeted through groups like Facebook, for example, social media groups as well. So my understanding is that Ozempic is about £200 per injection. They are selling these for 20 quid for a course of injections, so a huge differential in the price. So they're being made in China. By the way, you have no idea what's in that powder, even though if you're mixing it yourself. Also, many people have no idea how to mix it. I'm also deeply nervous about, do you mix it all in one go and then hold on to it and then inject it at different intervals? Again, that's going to have real problems in terms of storing that. Danish drug maker Novo Nordisk, which owns the patent to semaglutide and uses it to make Wegovy and Ozempic, is basically one of the companies that owns the patent. Eli Lilly owns tirzepatide. This is the active ingredient in Mounjaro. But obviously we've got all these counterfeit versions which are flooding the market. There are massive health dangers to the buyers. But of course, you see, I can see that people are desperate. It's much cheaper, and they see it on Facebook. They think it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, actually, when it comes to the police monitoring freedom of speech, what they ought to be doing is monitoring social media for a lot of very dangerous, it's not just Ozempic, there are lots of quacks and fake doctors putting out videos that are actually very dangerous, advising patients, for example, on diabetic patients who are on metformin, not to take it and instead go and take some extraordinary mixture of
tincture of bluebell,
whatever that they happen to be selling at £30 a jar. Now this is sort of old-fashioned Wild West elixir, you know, stuff, but really, if any of the social media sites had any genuine responsibility, that sort of thing, which is actively dangerous, should be stopped. And it's very dangerous. And you should, I'm afraid, I would advise nobody to buy any medical stuff off a social media site because you have no way of knowing what's in it, who the person is actually selling it, and whether it might kill you or not.
Well, and it's a very good, fair point. In fact, unapproved versions of semaglutide have been associated with at least 100 hospitalisations and at least 10 deaths in the US. The UK Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, the MHRA, says there are very strict criteria around the prescription of Ozempic, Wegovy or Mounjaro, and that includes a consultation. You must have that prescription carefully monitored and you need ongoing support. So if it looks too good to be true, it is. So please don't buy this cheap, shoddy drugs which are coming in from China. You have absolutely no idea what you're buying. And as Piers rightly says, of course, you're putting your health in danger as well. We're going to take some more of your messages and your calls after this break. Stay where you are. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
One of whom sits in that chair many weekends. I would say David Bull would be a superb person that I think could do the job and would be very, very popular in that role. But this is Nigel's choice. The choice of chairman is the leader. But we're going to be seeing soon, I think, the election for the party board. There's 3 ordinary members, and that continuation of the growth to professionalism and growth to democratisation of the party is ongoing. It hasn't finished.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 6:55, already on Saturday, June the 7th. Where has the time gone? Hi, David, great show. Thank you very much. Kevin in Gloucester. I just, David, looked this up online. The total police budget for England and Wales is 19.5 billion, yet the portion of the NHS budget used up for management is almost 30 billion. I ask you, does this make any sense to you? No. It doesn't, Kevin. Good morning, David. The health centre service in Crete runs a better service than the NHS. Actually, it's a really good point, that, because the Spanish health service as well is absolutely brilliant. It's exemplary from my experience in Spain. Keep these messages coming in, please. Do you think chucking 30 billion quid into the NHS is the most effective use of public funds? Good morning, Chris from Home Counties here. Ooh, I say. Great show. Over the last few months, me and my family have sadly had to use the NHS quite a bit. The nursing staff are great, but the processes are outdated. It requires old-fashioned time and motion studies. The biggest shake-up would be in the pharmacy departments. They should be 24 hours, not closed from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. That's a really good point. And in one hospital at the weekend, it had to be sent from one hospital 12 miles away. This affects the efficiency of the hospital by not discharging patients. One family member was in for an extra 2 days. That is so peachy because it's true. And so I used to go round and see my patient in the morning, and I would say, you're fit to be discharged, and then you get your TTAs, your to take away drugs. But of course, they were not actioned until late in the afternoon, by which time you realise your elderly patient had no slippers and the heating hadn't been turned on and social services hadn't been, so of course they stay in.
Yes, yes. No, I think that was a very good point. And the hospital pharmacies, of course, they should be open the whole time.
Why aren't they?
I don't know why. I mean, they've got enough people. But that's just another example of how management should be able to sort some of this stuff out pretty quickly.
David, we went to the USA a few years ago. This is Mick. Good morning to you. We had to go to a hospital with an eye complaint. Within 2 hours, once they got the holiday insurance sorted, we were seen, unlike the NHS where you're sitting waiting for hours. Dave Cole, good morning to you. Good morning, David. How much of that 30 billion quid will actually find its way to the coalface, or does it not really exist? It's a very good point. I don't know. The answer is not to chuck yet more money at it. Good morning, looking pretty in pink, Mr. Bull. Oh, thank you very much, Darren. I keep having my appointments for my spinal surgery clinic cancelled, the latest one in October, due to unforeseen circumstances arising. It's not fair, not fair at all. Maureen, good morning to you. Good morning, David. Now, the NHS, it took me 3 weeks to get a doctor's appointment who said I needed an X-ray, which I had 1 week later. I've lost you. Which I had 1 week later. That was 4 weeks ago. The doctor has the picture but no report. This is what I said to you earlier on, which is I've also had a procedure done. I've had some investigations done. I still, many weeks later, do not know the result. I phoned up the surgery. We can't give it to you.
No, it's not joined up. And your notes, for example, with the hospital notes and the GP's notes, they're not merged, which you'd think should be. And I mean, given all the technology we've got, and given the vast amounts of money paid into the NHS for their intranet, their own dedicated system, you would think it would be much faster, much quicker. But instead, it's slower. It would be quicker for the GPs to send letters by post,
which we used to do.
Emails.
Yes, with a quill.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, and send it by pigeon.
Yeah,
I know. I agree totally with you. It's a very long story behind that. We'll discuss that later. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. A very good morning to you. Much more to come.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips? couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid because it was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Give me a ring.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, very good morning to you. Just after 7 o'clock now on Saturday, June the 7th. Thanks very much for your company. This is Weekend Breakfast. I'm David Bull. Great news, of course. It's Saturday. The weather's terrible, but there is great news, and that is it's National Chocolate Ice Cream Day today. Yes, it is. Vanilla may be considered the most popular flavour, but ever since Italians, froze hot chocolate in 1692... Strange people. Chocolate has always been a close contender, and today celebrates this very day.
Ice cream, chocolate ice cream. It's a yummy treat.
It certainly is a yummy treat. Now, also, this is much more down my avenue. It's National Bubbly Day today. Sparkling wine, affectionately known as bubbly, it's the perfect beverage for celebrations because of its cork-popping goodness. Crisp, fruity flavours combined with delightful bubbles to create a celebratory drink. Perfect when enjoyed alone or with appetisers or a meal or alone. And luckily, Dean's run out to buy some champagne, and I can't wait to have that in just, 12 minutes' time. That's National Bubbly Day.
I'm drinking champagne, feeling no pain till early morning.
And also today it's National VCR Day. What do you remember of VCR? Yes, a day celebrating the videotape. Celebrating this day is simple. Dig up your old VHS recorder and your tapes and stroll down memory lane. Look at that, a VHS recorder. Young people will have no idea what that is or what you do with it. I'm going to be talking to Steve Denyer about that later on. The Buggles? Was it the Buggles? Yeah, very good, the Buggles. Right, let's move on to this hour's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Right, on this day in 1535, John Fisher, the Bishop of Rochester, was tried for treason. He was executed on the 22nd of June. Now, on this day in 1906, Cunard Line's RMS Lusitania was launched at the John Brown shipyard in Clydebank in Glasgow. At the time, she was the world's fastest and largest liner. And on this day in 1939, King George VI became the first British monarch to visit the United States of America. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
David Bull Weekend, come and start the show. Kisses in the mix, keeping you informed. This breakfast party where excitement is formed.
Well, a very good morning to you. 5 minutes past 7 on Saturday, June the 7th. I'm joined this morning by political commentator Piers Pottinger. Good morning.
Morning.
Are you enjoying yourself so far?
Absolutely, David.
Good,
yes.
good. I'm absolutely delighted. Let's just whiz you through this morning's papers if we can. This is a big story. This is the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Now, when I get up in the morning, which is about 2:20, I always look at the front pages, and I just read this. It's like every weekend there's a horror story where my mouth drops open and just think, who on earth is in charge in this country? Anyway, this is the headline. Fears over migrants are a form of terrorism. What? Yes, apparently to have concern about mass migration is not normal. No. It's a terrorist ideology, and it requires intervention by the government's anti-radicalisation programme, which, as we know, is called PREVENT. This is according to official documents. So apparently, if you believe that Western culture is under threat from mass migration, which I think most people do, and if you also think that there is a lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups, which I think we do, then you need to be referred to Prevent, because clearly you are a threat to this country. I mean, this is absolute blinking nonsense.
Yes, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. And the person who's the craziest in all of this is the person who actually wrote those words. And I would love to find out who that person is and why they think that. Presumably it's someone who dislikes our country enormously and feels that anyone who likes our country should be locked up. I mean, this is insanity.
It is insanity.
Yeah, and how anyone can seriously put forward this as an idea. And I mean, I think Prevent, who have been criticised for many things, but equally sometimes they do quite a good job. Not a brilliant job, but quite a good job sometimes. But this is surely the first thing the head of Prevent should do, is say, we didn't mean this, this is crazy.
Yes.
And of course, I mean...
And it slipped through.
I don't know how this happened.
But you see, even Keir Starmer, by this definition, would then fall under that. He talked about the island of strangers, which I think was actually the right thing to say. He would come under that. Robert Jenrick would come under that. I'm sure Nigel Farage would come under that. In fact, anyone who says that we are breaking down as a cohesive society in this country and actually we're separated into silos and we don't have those shared common values would then be caught up in a Prevent programme.
Yeah, it is immediately, anyone with those views is immediately called far right or extreme right. And also a lot of the mainstream media do this. The BBC are very, very bad at this. Anyone who has views that are not a normal, as they would call it, normal, liberal left leaning. And again, people on the right tend to be very much more tolerant of other people's views. I mean, I have many friends who are left-wing in some ways, or Labour voters. Actually, very few of them now.
You've had a cull.
Well, I think they've all lost heart. But at least one can have a reasonable discussion and a conversation about issues. That's what we want to do, have this, instead of immediately rushing into this extraordinary, he's an extreme right-winger. Why? Why do we have to get so carried away?
It seems absolutely extraordinary to me, and there is, if you're interested, go and read that. There's a lot in that copy as well about the sort of crazy situation we find ourselves in now. Also, let's just look very quickly at the Daily Express. This is Kemi Badenoch, Britain being mugged in asylum claims mess. We spoke about this an hour ago. It seems to me that Kemi Badenoch very much on the back foot here. She's declared war on activist judges at home and abroad. She says Britain is being mugged. A broken legal system has allowed sex offenders to avoid deportation, eco-fanatics to block roads and terrorists to walk free. She says we will bring an end to lawfare by turning the UK into the world's which is turning the UK into the world's softest touch for asylum seekers. Then here's the line that's important. This is likely to mean leaving the European Court of Human Rights. But the Reform UK has said, we are leaving the ECHR. She says, well, what we need to do is to have an inquiry into this. We're going to appoint Lord Wolfson, the Shadow Attorney General, and Helen Grant, the Shadow Solicitor General. We need to look into the way the ECHR is being used. We already know how it's being used.
Yes, I mean, this is what she seems to do. She kicks everything into the long grass. She doesn't want to come up with any ideas or any thoughts. And she's been in power as leader of the opposition, which people need to be reminded of that fact. Most people think Nigel Farage is the real leader of the opposition, most people think. And she is coming rather late to the party with this. We all know what she said, but why set up a review headed by some of her own shadow? I mean, none of this makes any sense. What she needs to do is to come out with a series, not just on this issue, which we all know anyway. She needs to come out with a series of views about what the Conservative Party's principles are, what their values are, their vision for the future, and what she really cares about. But she keeps talking about policy renewal. and nothing is coming out of the machine. It's been a year. How long does she need? And she's all this time she's going backwards in the polls, losing. I mean, Reform have only got a handful of MPs. Mind you, the Conservatives have got pretty few numbers as well. But I mean, the Reform have really got, you know, 5 or 6. Is it 6 now? 5. No,
is it 6?
I think it's 6, but then you'll have to probably exclude Rupert Lowe. Thank goodness. And the problem there is that Kemi, who's supposed to be the leader of the opposition, is making no impact at all.
No. Well, let's talk about this shock by-election win in Hamilton, shall we, which obviously was on Thursday.
Yeah.
Labour narrowly won this by-election in Scotland on Thursday night. Support for the SNP collapsed. Now, Anna Sarwar, the Scottish Labour leader, hailed the party's incredible result in Hamilton, taking the seat from the Nationalists. OK, I can go along with that to some degree. Now, as you said, and this is the reason I wanted to segue into it, the Tories finished a distant 4th with just 1,621 votes. They only just saved their deposit. That is appalling.
It is. It's terrible. And it's indicative of the problem there. Mind you, I mean, in Scotland, Labour look better than the SNP, who, if possible, are even worse than the Labour Party.
Right.
I mean, Scotland's a complete mess.
Let's try and bring you some graphics just to show this, because there's been a lot of spin and bluster around this. There are a couple of graphics that I want to show you, if I can, which look at the actual percentage votes and also the numbers of people that voted as well. So the thing is that they keep saying this is a great result for the Labour Party. It's complete nonsense. So the Labour Party, of course, did well, got 31.5%, but they are down 2%, so they actually lost vote share. So here we go. This is the one I want to show you first. So Labour 31.5%, so down 2%. The SNP down a whopping 16.8%. The Conservatives down 11.5%. So the only, I mean, the Greens did go up 2%, but look at that Reform result. Now, I know I'm partisan, but when everyone says, oh, well, in fact, someone tweeted yesterday, oh, terrible result for Reform, I'm like, they are the only party in the ascendancy here. To go up in Scotland by 26.2% is extraordinary for a party that had absolutely no footprint in Scotland.
And also, Hamilton, as a constituency, has a big heritage with the SNP.
Indeed.
Because it was when Winifred Ewing won that seat originally, was the turning point for the SNP. It's of enormous significance. So where the Labour Party is right in saying it is a significant win, it is.
It is.
Because it does show up the SNP in what should be a sort of their safest seat.
It's the heartlands, isn't it?
But I mean, what it does show is that the SNP are even more incompetent than the Labour Party, which is pretty hard to achieve.
Well, it's a very, very high bar indeed.
And if you look at every measure, education, health, transport,
nothing works.
And they pay the highest taxes in the land.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Scotsman, and the thought of living back in Scotland terrifies me.
Does it?
Yes, because it's the worst place you can be living at the moment in Britain.
Let's look at the numbers if we can. There's another slide with the actual numbers on it. So Labour polled 8,559. They're down 3,600 votes. I mean, that's pretty significant. The SNP down 8,000. This is just putting a meat on the bone here. Reform up 7,000. Conservative down 4.7 thousand. Green up 695. Lib Dem. That's another interesting point there, isn't it, about the Lib Dems down?
Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And for a long time, the Lib Dems used to be really quite significant in Scotland, with leaders like Joe Grimmond. They were strong in Scotland. They're not now.
No. It's quite interesting. Professor Sir John Curtis, who I have a lot of time for, the polling expert, he said what these show is Reform is eating the Conservatives for lunch, breakfast and dinner.
Yes, he did. And he's right. I mean, and that's why Kemi's performance recently is, and in fact total performance, is so dire. And the Conservatives are kidding themselves if they think they've got any hope in the next election.
But isn't it interesting that Starmer didn't even go? Not once.
No, Starmer didn't turn up because he doesn't like going to places.
But is he the electoral liability for Labour?
I think, well, he's one of them. Starmer and Reeves. I think Bridget Phillipson's pretty ghastly. I mean, everything she does.
What do you really think?
Well, what everything she's done has been harmful to education, not positive. I mean, they are a very, very poor cabinet. I think in my lifetime they're the least impressive cabinet I've ever seen.
I mean, they have just got an assembly of people who've actually done nothing.
No, except for trade union roles. And apart from Starmer being a solicitor, and the guy, even worse, I forgot, Lord Hermer.
Lord Hermer, of course, his chum.
A man who actually detests Britain.
Yes.
Made his fortune by representing enemies of Britain. And a man who really is not a politician,
but
has no idea about the role of Attorney
judgment
General.
on the part of Starmer to appoint
immense lack of judgment. But Starmer is a man who's shown to have broken all his famous pledges he made on television with Andrew Neil, and he broke every single one of them and won't even acknowledge it. He doesn't acknowledge mistakes. He doesn't acknowledge when he's got something wrong. He just simply U-turns to try desperately to cling on to power, which is the only thing he wants, is power for himself. And all this nonsense of pretending to be an international statesman. I mean, what's happening in Ukraine? This seems to have been completely forgotten.
Hasn't it?
And the war is looking at its worst ever for the people in Kiev being killed by the hour, by the Russians, and suddenly Trump's forgotten about it. Europe seems to have forgotten about it. Starmer, who was going to have boots on the ground and lead the coalition of the willing, that's fizzled out quietly, and he's not saying anything about it at all. And this is the biggest threat to world peace, is what's happening in Ukraine. And Starmer, what's happening? I mean, he having been the great statesman, is now just quietly forgetting about it.
And it's interesting, and we're going to talk about this later, Russia is at war with Britain and the US is no longer a reliable ally. That's according to Fiona Hill, government defence expert. She says that actually this is what they're already doing, that Russia is already at war, just in terms of the way that they are attacking our vital infrastructure. And she is absolutely spot on with that. And of course, what are we doing about it? Not very much. She cites poisoning, assassination, sabotage operations, cyber attacks, trying to get down our critical pipelines, also the undersea cables as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's right.
And, you know, they send people over to poison our citizens.
On British soil.
Yes.
Let's talk about this because it has made all the headlines. It was still leading last night when I went to bed. Zia Youssef has resigned as the Reform UK chairman after a row about banning the burqa. That is not actually true. Ignited a new civil war in the party. Mr Youssef gave Nigel Farage, the party leader, 10 minutes warning before announcing, "I no longer believe working to get a Reform government elected is a good use of my time and hereby resign the office." It came after Mr Youssef, a Muslim, said a call by 2 Reform MPs for the burqa to be banned was dumb. Now, all of these media outlets are conflating the two. They're putting them two together and saying cause and effect. It's not true. It's simply not true. Nigel Farage says there's more to the decision, saying the chairman had indicated he had wanted to quit before the row blew up in public. He gave an interview, actually, to another news outlet. This is Nigel Farage. And I thought he explained it very well, actually.
Yes.
He said Zia Youssef has done an amazing job. This is someone who has no background in politics, came into the party, professionalised it, has worked 16 hours a day. He's tired. And I think one of the other things that Nigel said about that was that he is technically very able, but politics is an art and a science. You have to take people with you. We have a voluntary party, you have a professional party. People need to feel loved. You have to tell people they're doing a great job. Why on earth would you, if you live in the middle of wherever, whichever county, turn up in the morning on a Saturday and go and deliver leaflets or do coffee mornings or whatever? You just need to be thanked, and sometimes that wasn't happening.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can see that, but equally, I don't think much of someone who's the chairman of a major political party, which it is now, who resigns on the polling day of a key by-election. while the polls are still open.
Yeah. Do you think that affected the result?
Well, it could have done. We'll never know, but it might well have done. And I think that's shoddy. And he obviously knew what was happening. And you could. Why did he have to do it on that day? I thought that was very poor by him and showed very poor judgment. And I think less of him as a result of it. And I do think Nigel Farage handled it extremely well. It's not civil war. I think that's completely wrong. Obviously,
but of course they're loving the spin on this.
They love the idea of it. But yes, he's gone. It is unfortunate that this has happened, because I think this man seems, as chairman, to have worked extremely hard and done quite a lot, certainly in the local elections, to achieve great results, which he must get a great deal of credit for.
I would agree.
But as I say, walking out in what would appear to be a huff on the day of an election while the polls are open is unforgivable.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, according to this, where's this? This is in the Telegraph. They say Mr. Youssef had bristled at attempts to loosen his grip on internal power. Aaron Lobo, Mr. Farage's former producer on GB News, is understood to have been promoted to operations director. I think, look, at the end of the day, and I've been there since the beginning, the party was minuscule and it has grown exponentially. And as you grow, any organisation, I've worked in business, any organisation grows, you get teething problems.
Yeah.
And of course, you have more and more people coming in. You then need to work out how you manage those people, so the HR side of everything, and then work out strategically how you're going to best place resources. But also, you're talking about a national organisation which has branches in Scotland, in Wales, and so on. And so it is a monster. And as it grows, it becomes even bigger. And therefore, you need to make sure that you actually have good governance.
Yes, and this man was chairman of the party and can be replaced. As he's discovered, everyone can be replaced. What I'm more interested in is the very little coverage that's been given to the departure of Baroness Curran, the minister in the Department of Energy under Ed Miliband, who was appointed
2 weeks, wasn't it?
2 weeks.
Yes.
She's been there, and now she's gone. No explanation given. We normally would see a letter of resignation would be public. We haven't seen that. It's all very quiet. Has net zero, mad Ed Miliband, finally been caught out?
Yeah.
But I mean, for her to be given that job, and she's an experienced, long-serving Labour politician and obviously made into a baroness, why did she walk out?
What do you think?
I don't know. Maybe she realised that she couldn't buy into what is a completely mad scheme that is also, apart from the NHS, the second biggest disaster in the country in terms of squandering billions of our taxpayers' money.
Just going back to Nigel Farage, if I may. So just to be clear, the Conservative Party in the space of 3 years has had 7 chairmen, just to put this into context.
Exactly, yeah.
Andrew Stevenson, Jake Berry, Nadeem Zahawi, Greg Hans, Richard Holdham, Richard Fuller, Dominic Johnson, Nigel Huddleston, and so on.
And what did they achieve?
well, that's a very good point, of course, and, you know, they're very much in the wilderness, aren't they?
The graph goes like that.
The graph does go like that. Now, this is quite interesting. This, no name on it. Nigel Farage has one more public falling out and reform is finished. Your thoughts?
Not true. I don't think it's going to affect the
I don't either.
at all. I mean, if it was a loved figure or someone who really was central to the core. I mean, if Lee Anderson was to sort of give up, I think that would damage them enormously. But there's no, I think it's a question of who's going to join them. I think we'll see more of that. There are so many Tories who are being talked about as having conversations, looking like wanting to shift. And the reason they want to shift is that their constituents are telling them, we're thinking of voting reform. If you want to be back as our MP, you better be representing Reform, not the Conservative Party.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I know certain conversations are taking place, but obviously I couldn't possibly say.
No, I'm sure.
I couldn't possibly say. Piers, thanks very much for the moment. We're talking about the NHS this morning. Is investing 30 billion quid into the NHS, which is the latest Starmer ruse, which is I'm going to chuck you 30 billion quid into the NHS because that is the way to solve all the ills of the NHS. Is that the most effective use of public funds. The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well. Lots more still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
I think he's shattered, physically, he's exhausted, and I think that this was actually not about the burqa ban question. That is not why Zia Yusuf has left the party for the time being, or left his role in the party. I think that was a catalyst, because I think he took a whole load of grief on social media and on any number of other channels over. I think he was a little blindsided by it. That was a communications failure. And I think it's been really, really rough for him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Weekend Breakfast, 7:29 on Saturday, June the 7th. I'm joined by Piers Pottinger, political commentator. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, I looked back this week and I did grin. Rachel Reeves turns up at a bus factory, okay? And so the great and the good decided a really good idea. Let's get everyone who builds buses to surround Rachel Reeves while she gives this sort of robot-like speech. And this is such a great article in the Telegraph saying politicians are a right nuisance. You're in your place of work, you're quietly doing the crossword, a minister shows up, and by some strange convention you're required to stand around them for an hour whilst they lie to the TV cameras and dodge questions from the press. Well, there was one standout star of this. They've named him Calvin. We think his name is Dean, actually. The latest stop in Rachel Reeves' magical mystery tour was a bus factory in Rochdale. So all the workers were there in a semicircle around the Chancellor, of course, and she was very robotic. She recited these words: "To serve Halton, St Helens, Woodchurch," she announced. It sounded like she was announcing the service was going to leave in 5 minutes from platform 3. And obviously the great and the good, the workers who build those buses lost the will to live whilst she was giving this speech. I don't know if we got the clip, but it's just priceless. So this chap in the front row, he started off by looking into the air, thinking, I wish... He's probably thinking, what am I having for lunch? And then he scratched his crotch. He then rolled his eyes heavenward as though this is the worst day of his life. And he has become an internet superstar. Let's have a look at the clip.
And put simply, our plan, the central barrier to economic growth has been underinvestment. First, stability. So, reforming our pension system to over the first 10 years of the previous Conservative government, no matter where they grow up. And because I know, and thousands of pounds extra on that our public services needed. It may sound dry, but it is one of the reasons why there hasn't been enough investment in the North and the Midlands for decades. Over 7,000 new homes. Improving, and I meant what I said, in all parts of the country, not just a few. That is how questions now. If we start with...
Poor man.
Oh. Hilarious.
Hilarious.
It's really
and
good.
And now basically people are crowdfunding to buy him a pint.
Yes.
For his amazing performance behind Rachel Reeves. But honestly, it was just the fact that he started rolling his eyes and thinking, I wish I was somewhere else.
I mean, it's hilarious because it's how to mismanage an event. It comes from America, where everyone who gives press conferences in America has always got lots of people standing behind them for some reason, mostly because they want to be on television, and really hardly ever do any of them speak. And so the idea here is that in a factory, the workers are showing support by standing behind, standing with, and they're forced to stand there for an hour and a half, and they all look miserable, actually, not just Calvin. There was one wonderful chap with his arms very firmly folded who was not going to applaud at any time, and even the applause, such as there was very limp. And I mean, if you're going to do something as crass as that, it shows again, I mean, how the Labour Party are incapable of managing anything at all. They did it with Starmer at BAE on the defence.
Yes, they
did the same thing. And we had a row of people from BAE behind who all looked utterly miserable, thinking we want to actually get on and get back to making the submarines that he's promised we're going to deliver, which will actually take 20 years, but never mind. And they keep doing this. They don't learn.
Oh, it's brilliant. The Times also commented on this. Eventually, Reeves emerged. The more aggressively she smiled, the worse things got. I can't ever recall seeing the gathered ranks of window dress workers looking quite so desperate to get back to work. I mean, it's absolutely true.
Well, at least she wasn't wearing a hard hat this time, because they normally always wear high-vis jackets and hard hats. If I had £1 for every time you see a politician in those, I'd be a very rich man.
You would.
And they achieve nothing. I mean, what these people have got to understand is, I don't know why they go to all this trouble when it's having the reverse effect. The only thing people are talking about Reeves' speech is Calvin, who's now a media superstar.
He is a media superstar. I mean, there's another point in this Times article that says everything Starmer and his government says is dependent on being able to claim to have inherited the bad economy from the Conservatives, which is what we hear the whole time, even though they've been in power for a year. And I'd like to know, where is all this new money coming from? So the 30 billion we're going to chuck into the NHS. So either they are just telling massive porky pies, or tax rises are coming, even though Rachel Reeves says she's not going to break her self-imposed fiscal rules.
I think it was yesterday she refused to say she wouldn't put up taxes, and I think we're obviously going to get some pretty unpleasant.
But which taxes?
It's going to be a very unpleasant budget. Well, I think there are a number of things they're going to do. One obvious one, which I was amazed they didn't do the last time, is a gambling tax. And there isn't a gambling. That's potentially a large opportunity, and I suspect she'll take it this time, because she's looking anywhere to do something.
Under the sofa.
If she's going to disband the Department of Media, Culture and Sport, which the word is it's going to be scrapped, and bits of it will be absorbed into different departments. Right. And it'll be the end of Lisa Nandy. One less. you know, but unfortunately, we're going to see they'll freeze the income tax threshold. They'll do probably corporation tax, which is going to.
I mean, are they trying to destroy every business?
Yes, I mean that's what they're doing.
Oh, right,
that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They want to bring they seem to think that by having as many unemployed, incredibly poor people as possible, they'll all vote Labour.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're trying to achieve, and they're succeeding. Because, by the way, have you noticed she doesn't use the magic word growth anymore? Because even she's realised that everything she's done has had the reverse effect.
Absolutely.
There is no growth in this country at the moment and for the foreseeable future.
But this goes back to your bigger point, which is none of them have ever had a job that is actually a real
Correct.
job.
They don't know.
None of them, not one of the cabinet has run a company.
No.
Have they?
No.
Now, that's a problem.
Yeah, it
because
is.
Until you've run a company, you don't understand HR, you don't understand employers' national insurance contributions,
Yeah.
you don't understand that threshold. Even if you're running a pub, you don't understand what energy prices do to your business.
Absolutely, and the hospitality centre is probably one of the worst sectors that's been hit by the new national insurance tax and everything else. But look at the farmers, they're getting hit all the time. The fishing industry is destroyed by this ludicrous EU pact. And again, these so-called marvellous trade deals haven't actually when you look for the detail, that's to be worked out. So they're not happening. I mean, everything is vague.
But I think the other thing is that none of these metropolitan elite ever go into the country. So they haven't been to the coastal villages and towns where the fishing industry or the decimated fishing industry is. They have no idea how farmers work. On the way into London, I just see swathes of solar panels on prime agricultural land. That is just madness. It's sheer madness. And particularly, we need food security in this country.
We do. Yeah, I mean, Labour doesn't understand the countryside.
No,
it never has. It's basically against it for some reason. And but there's no sector in the community at the moment that is benefiting at all from the Labour government. There are a few public servants who've got a small pay increase, but other than that, it's a disaster. And we're going to have, don't forget, the summer really starts when the strikes start, and they're going to start very soon. We're going to have the teachers, the doctors and the nurses, they'll all be, and the civil servants are talking about it. And as for the poor people in Birmingham,
the bins,
the unions have now said they're going to strike till December.
I mean, that's just totally
now that is, and there is, I think there's a famous Labour mayor of Birmingham, isn't there? He's rather silent on the whole matter.
He is very silent, yes.
And if I lived in Birmingham, I'd be hopping mad about this, and also very worried. It's a very serious health hazard.
Of course it is, and rats the size of dogs.
Why are they doing nothing about it?
Because they don't want to.
And Angela Rayner, it's her own union. I mean, she's the head of local government, a member of Unite. Unite actually pay her. They've paid her thousands of pounds this year, and she's an active member of the union that is striking. And she can't sort it out. She went to see them, and they're now saying, we're going to strike till December. That is shocking. And it's a national disgrace.
I agree totally with you. Lots of messages coming in. David, as a second-year Reform member, the resignation of Zia Youssef is a small bump in the road of a growing party. I'm sure Nigel and Richard will pick and install another suitable person to fill that role. That's Steve in Cambridge. Good morning, David. Here's an example of NHS stupidity. I applied for an investigation appointment at Addenbrooke's and was told, no, you're overqualified. Perhaps they didn't want to find out. I mean, what? Oh, yeah. Good morning, David. Great as always. First time I've seen Piers. Please get him back on. Have a great day. That's David in Grimsby. That's nice, isn't it?
Very nice, David.
Yes, very nice. When are the Tories actually going to get a grip and put Jenrick in charge? He's acting more like their leader anyway. I would agree, Darren. The problem with the Tories, they're a party within a party within another party and another party totally split. That's right. There are actually 6 different factions within the Conservative Party, whether it's the ERG, Conservative Growth Group, the whatever, New Conservatives, whatever else the other ones are. For years, Mick says, we've been told we have to put up with immigration whether we like it or not. We have had no say whatsoever. I agree totally. Good morning, David. The NHS needs a top-down reform. Management is at fault, and as soon as government realises that and sorts it out, the NHS will always be behind other countries. Best weekend news show. Steve, thank you very much for that. That's a great accolade indeed. I'll just do one more quick one. Tracy, good morning to you. Good morning, David. I've worked in the NHS since 1981. It now needs total restructuring. The nurses and midwives are exhausted because the 12-hour shifts were brought in. I hated them. Much preferred doing 5 short shifts, earlies and lates, and the night shift was also shorter. Too many managers and specialist staff that are reluctant to actually work on the floor. Tracy, you need to join me as we rewrite how the NHS needs to work and put forward a proper plan for the NHS. I agree, 12 hours far too long in terms of a shift. I used to do it 12-hour shifts overnight. And by, you know, sort of, I think we started at 8 in the evening till 8 in the morning. I mean, you were absolutely run over.
Sure,
it was just dreadful. Let's take a break. Coming up after the break, we've got all the latest sporting stories. I'm going to be joined by Matt Hutchinson, who's a TalkSport reporter. That's all still to come. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go through the rest of the front pages because I've been rather remiss this morning. Let's start with the front page of the Times. We've talked about this squeeze on services to pump cash into the NHS. Other frontline services are going to be squeezed. This is to ring-fence the money going into the NHS. 30 billion quid. That's why I'm asking, is investing 30 billion pounds into the NHS the most effective use of public funds? The number 0344 499 1000. You can get in touch in all the usual ways as well. We spoke about this story as well. The Daily Mail exposed the DIY fat jab dealers. This is do-it-yourself Ozempic. So instead of spending 200 quid, which is used off-label for weight loss, these are the GLP-1 agonists. Instead of spending £200 an injection, people are buying these from unscrupulous dealers. They're £20 for a series of injections. They're then being told this is how you make them up, and basically you then inject them. There are huge concerns over what on earth are you actually mixing up. Have you got sterile water, for example, to mix it up? How are you keeping those injections? And in the United States, 10 people have died as a result of that. So if you are buying cheap stuff off the internet, do not do it, please, because, of course, it could kill you. The Guardian, this is an interesting article. We spoke about it rather quickly this morning. This is the headline, Russia is at war with us, warns the defence advisor. This is Fiona Hill. She became the White House chief Russia advisor during Donald Trump's first term and contributed to the British government's strategy. She did that with Lord Robertson and Richard Barrons, and she basically says that Russia's already at war with us, and she talks about the fact that they are infiltrating all sorts of our vital infrastructure, such as poisonings, assassinations, sabotage operations, all kinds of cyber attacks, and also influence operations in this country. Let's look at the eye. This is really interesting as well. Alzheimer's blood test breakthrough to help spot disease early. We spoke about this the other week, actually, but essentially this is a blood test that can accurately detect people with early symptoms, according to research. They're looking at two proteins. This is amyloid and tau, and those are the proteins that you see, what we call tangles, that seems to affect the neuronal firing in the brain. So it looks like this is a very, very accurate test. 95% accuracy in detecting people with memory problems, and then ruling people out without dementia, 82%. So this is groundbreaking stuff, and actually I'm quite keen that we talk about that a bit tomorrow, so I'll hang on to that for tomorrow. The Mirror, babies at war, Elon Musk and, of course, Donald Trump. I'm taking away my toys from you, so you can't use them. We'll talk about that with Caroline coming up after the break. Also, front page of this Sun this morning, cops will never pin Maddie on me. Madeleine McCann, prime suspect Christian Bruckner, has gloated the police will never pin the case on him without a body. And, of course, this is a race against time because they have to release Christian Bruckner. And, of course, the police are now focusing their attention on a number of sites and excavations and desperate to try and find some evidence of the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. She disappeared, of course, in 2007. And then, finally, we go back to Donald Trump. Lost in space, bitter. Ex-first buddy Elon Musk is taking his SpaceX Dragon landing pod away. I'm taking it away. You're not playing. I don't like you. This apparently he's taking it away after Trump dumped him. It leaves NASA astronauts stuck in space. Cry baby. We've got the richest man in the world having a tantrum with the most powerful man in the world. Yeah. This bromance certainly died.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It is,
really.
Rather.
I mean, but it's also very sad.
It is.
It's a sad reflection on the state of politics in the United States. And also, what is absolutely horrifying, and thank goodness we haven't got to that point here, where the richest man is dictating so much. And he isn't elected. No. He is not a democratically elected person. No. And yet they're already talking about the damage he's going to inflict with members of Congress on the bill going through by sponsoring them, i.e. bribing them.
Well, one might say we have a similar problem in this country where you put people in positions of power when you're not elected either. I'm thinking particularly people like Lord Herman.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's Lord Ali.
Yes, Wahid Ali.
Who likes to, in his small way, support the Labour Party by giving them endless clothes and tickets and goodness knows
and
what.
Lots of pairs of glasses.
But I mean, Musk he does appear to be not altogether 100% there, as they say.
I think it was Trump actually said that he may have a problem with substances.
Well, I think viewers of a certain age would know the expression, he's 4 coupons short of a pop-up toaster.
I know Green Shield stamps, Piers, I know those. Right, let's take a break. After the break, all the sporting headlines. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
What will it take for the British people to actually take action on this? You know, after the Manchester Arena bombing, we thought maybe that would do it. No, we were told don't look back in anger. Then Southport happened. The people rose up, the great British people, and they were all slurred as far right, even by Keir Starmer, called criminals by the government before there was even a legal trial.
Yeah.
And now we had the report out showing that there are no far right connections to those political prisoners we have, like Lucy Connolly. Let's admit that we have political prisoners in this country. That's the reality.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 7:53, Saturday, June the 7th. Time for a sporting update. Joining me this morning, Matt Hutchinson, who is a TalkSport reporter. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you, David?
Yeah, good. Thanks very much. Shall we start with Tottenham?
Let's do it. Yes. So, in a nutshell, Spurs up in acrimony, in uproar once again. So Ange Postecoglou, the manager for the last 2 seasons, David, has been sacked. It's their worst Premier League season ever. This campaign, they lost 22 matches. I'm sure you know all about that as a big sporting fan yourself. They did, however, win the Europa League. So that's the second tier of European football. Spurs' first major trophy for 17 years. So it was a season of Jekyll and Hyde, bittersweet. And the chairman, Daniel Levy, as Piers and I were just discussing, as a Spurs fan, I'm sure you've got an opinion.
He has
for you, Piers. Pulled the axe on Ange Postecoglou.
And are you surprised by that?
It's not a surprise. I think it's unfortunate because he had an injury-filled season, lots of players ruled out, and to win a trophy at Spurs is no mean feat. To not win a trophy in 17 years, a remarkable achievement, but the league form spoke for itself. We understand at TalkSport that Thomas Frank, that's the Brentford manager, is going to replace Ange Postecoglou. Not confirmed yet, but that's what we're reporting.
Okay.
Thomas Frank, unbelievable job at Brentford. He got them in the top half of the Premier League table this season on a very limited budget. He's had players there as Ivan Toney and Mbeumo, who potentially is going to go to Man United this summer. And he's just, for a club of Brentford's size, done a magnificent job. So they'll be very, very disappointed, Brentford fans, if he does leave.
I'm sure they will.
Other candidates include Oliver Glasner, who won the FA Cup at Palace this season, and Marco Silva, who is, again, doing well at Fulham. So, yeah, for Spurs, it's all up in the air. Ange gone, and we think Thomas Frank will replace him.
Ange gone. Let's talk about Djokovic, shall we? Because my understanding is he's hinting at retiring. Is that right?
He is indeed, yeah. So
How old is he?
Djokovic turned 38 last month.
Oh, very old.
He's had a remarkable career. The most Grand Slams of any men's single player, more than Rafael Nadal, more than Roger Federer. And he lost to Yannick Sinner, a man in his 20s, in straight sets in the French Open semi-final yesterday. And Djokovic said, and I quote, "This could be my last match at Roland Garros." So that would be the end of the big three if Djokovic does retire. However, a few times in his career, in his mid-30s, he has hinted that he's struggling with injuries and form, and then continued and had more success. So it's not guaranteed, but it looks like Djokovic
But he wouldn't have
next
said
few
that.
months.
He wouldn't have said that if he didn't mean it, would he?
Well, but he has this obsession, David. He has what all top athletes have, a pure obsession for his sport. So it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up doing another few months, maybe another year in the sport, 'cause he'll want one more Grand Slam, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Really good to see you, Matt.
And you.
And I'll let you go and do your TalkSport bulletin now, because obviously you're
spinning plates.
Spinning plates, you're in high demand. Thank you ever so much, Matt. That's all the latest sporting headlines. Just very quickly, Piers, let's talk, though, about the Epsom Derby, which I know you're a big fan of.
Yep, absolutely. It's the greatest classic, really. Any racing fan will tell you it's the one race that you want to win. It started in 1780 and was nearly called the Bunbury. Because it was...
I think I knew that for some reason.
Lord Bunbury and Lord Derby.
That's
right. They decided they were going to have a new race named after one of them, and they flipped a coin, and it came out. Otherwise, it would have been... And there is, in fact, a Bunbury Cup, which is run at Newmarket. But this is a great race. Today, because there's been a lot of rain overnight, and there's... I think there's meant to be quite a bit more today. It's going to change the situation quite a lot, and I'm afraid for favourite backers, a ruling court, which is the favourite, won't like the ground getting softer and may even not run.
What?
And the trainer has already said today that they're going to take a view, and as it progresses, because the race isn't until 3:30, if it gets even softer, I suspect they won't run as valuable a horse as ruling court on ground it may not like. And for that reason, I think there's some value to be had for punters, because there's some big priced outsiders that this ground will help and suit, not least Lazy Griff.
Oh, I'm getting tips.
Trained by Mark Johnson. It's 50 to 1. And it's ridden by, again, at Epsom, you want a really good, experienced jockey. The most successful jockey at Epsom was Lester Piggott, who won 9 derbies. Absolutely incredible. My favourite was on Nijinsky in 1970. But this jockey is a Frenchman called Christophe Soumillon, and in my opinion, one of the greatest jockeys still riding in the world. Very experienced, highest of high quality, and the rain will suit this horse, as it will Aidan O'Brien's third string Lambourne, which is the biggest price of his 3 runners. And it's going to be a very, very interesting race, and for the punters, more fun with the ground changing, and it's the kind of ground that can throw up a surprise. The favourite is Delacroix. It's a very worthy favourite, trained again by Aidan O'Brien. He's going for his 11th Derby win as a trainer. Absolutely extraordinary. And the best jockey in the world, Ryan Moore, riding. So it's a very interesting race.
Well, Piers, look, not only are you politically astute, you've also given us the tips for the Derby as well. Look, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. So many people are saying I really enjoyed Piers's input as well. So please do come back and visit us in the near future.
I look forward to it immensely.
Fantastic. Piers, thanks ever so much for your contribution this morning. Right, time for a break. After the break, we're going to get all the latest news from across the pond. This is Talk.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're
Keeping it real.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you, just after 8 o'clock now on Saturday, June the 7th. I'm David Bull, and this is Weekend Breakfast. Thanks ever so much for your company. Weather, not very good. Raining. Anyway, great news for you, because it is Saturday. Well, today is National Chocolate Ice Cream Day. Yum. Now, vanilla may be considered the most popular flavour, but ever since the crazy Italians, and I count you in that, Gabriella, froze hot chocolate in 1692, chocolate has always been a close contender, and today celebrates National Chocolate Ice Cream Day. Oh, very good, Dave. Also today, now, I do like ice cream. I have to be a bit careful with it, but it doesn't like me. It's also National Bubbly Day today. Sparkling wine, affectionately known as bubbly, is the perfect beverage for celebrations, including the Derby, if you are a winner, by the way, in the Derby, because of its cork-popping goodness. Crisp, fruity flavours combine with delightful bubbles to create a celebratory drink perfect when enjoyed alone or with appetizers or a meal or alone. It's National Bubbly Day. And also today, I'm going to talk to Steve Denyer about this later on. It's National VCR Day, a day celebrating the humble videotape. Yes, and celebrating is very simple. All you have to do is to dig out your old VCR recorder. Then you need to get your tapes, and you need to then stroll down memory lane. Yeah?
Watch things on VCR with me.
Oh, that noise. And then it came out, didn't it, like that, and it took it forever, and then you pulled it out, and then the tape was all stuck in the tape recorder, and it went everywhere, and then you got a pencil out and tried to push it up. Yeah. Right, let's move on to this morning's fascinating facts.
Today's fascinating facts.
Some new ones for you this hour. On this day in 1977, more than 1 million people lined the streets of London to watch the royal family on their way to St Paul's at the start of the Queen's Silver Jubilee celebrations. On this day in 1977. On this day in 2000, Tony Blair, the UK Prime Minister, was heckled and he was criticised by the respected, do you remember this, the Women's Institute? Good for them. Yeah, the Women's Institute members. He gave a speech and they heckled him. Gosh, was that really that long ago? 25 years ago. And on this day in 2015, the death of the English actor Christopher Lee, who I adored as a child. He often portrayed villains. He was obviously Count Dracula as well in 7 Hammer horror films. His other major roles included Count Dooku in several Star Wars films and Saruman in both The Lord of the Rings and also in The Hobbit. And those are this hour's fascinating facts.
David Bull's breakfast, oh what a treat. Gather around, it can't be beat. Wake up your senses, let's celebrate. Love's flowing, it's never too late.
Well, a very good morning to you. 7 minutes past 8. Lots going on in the papers this morning. Fears over migrants are a form of terrorism. Yes, you read that correctly. This is Prevent saying that actually, if you are concerned about the impact of mass migration into this country, then you need to be referred to Prevent. Also saying that people who are not integrating into this country because of whether it's certain ethnic and cultural groups, also apparently that is against the rules, and that you need, it could require require referral for de-radicalisation. What a load of absolute old hooey that is. Lots more going on in the papers as well. This is a big story for the Daily Mail. It's well done them for doing this. Expose the DIY fat jab dealers. This is people who are trying to use these weight loss jabs, which are available off-label, but they cost about 200 quid per injection. Now, I've seen some very impressive results with these. What actually I'm unclear about is whether you put the weight back on once you finish those jabs. But anyway, and what people are doing is they are then going to Facebook groups and they're ordering counterfeit drugs, which they're mixing up themselves, not necessarily with sterile water, and injecting themselves, and people have run into real trouble, whether they're hospitalised as a result. 10 deaths in the United States as well. So if it looks too good to be true, please, it is. Do not buy that stuff. Lots more going on as well. And the Times. Squeeze on services to pump the cash into the NHS. This is the spending review, which is taking place next week. Starmer seems to think that to help him politically, he has to announce 30 billion quid to be spent on the NHS. We already spend £176 billion on the NHS, which is 11.7% of GDP. So if you add another 30 to that, we're now over £200 billion. Now, when you look at that in terms of the percentage of state spending, we're now at 41%. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the outcomes from the health service are pretty abysmal. And Aradazi has written this plan saying the NHS is in a critical condition. We're waiting for some sort of some plan to come forward. But I'm asking this morning, is investing 30 billion quid into the NHS the most effective use of public funds? Also, where is this money coming from? The magic money tree, I think. And then the other stories, which I think are in a couple of the papers, which leads me nicely into our next section, which is summarised rather beautifully in the Daily Mirror. Babies at war. And, of course, you've got Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Babies at war. And on that note, it's time for Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Faraday.
Yeah, Caroline Faraday.
Way to do disservice to babies. I've seen much better behaved babies.
I mean, it's great headline, isn't it? Babies at war. It's like, I'm going to take away my SpaceX. I'm not going to let you do that. I mean, I don't know what your reading of this is, but Donald Trump says Elon Musk, this is the latest, has lost his mind. He attempted to draw a line under a bitter White House feud. He says he's not particularly interested in speaking to Elon Musk. As we know, they clashed publicly over the tax and spending bill. The president says, I'm over it. I want to move on. I'm not interested in talking to him. And, of course, in the week, I think this was Thursday, Musk said that Trump needed to be impeached and he was in the Epstein files. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up.
It went down, David. It went down. And apparently the only two people that didn't see this coming were Donald Trump and Elon Musk themselves. The rest of us were like, go on, I saw this all along. You know when have you ever been at one of those weddings where you're watching the couple and you think, this isn't going to last? Yeah. I feel like that is what happened, where the whole time we've been like, this isn't going to last, and when it goes wrong, it's going to be really ugly. And then it just blew up so quickly. So cut back to last Friday, Saturday, whenever it was, that they had that weird Oval Office departure of Musk, and he had a little bit of a black eye. He also had like a weird bruise here, a little mark here, and Donald Trump said, "Oh, do you? I didn't notice that." It was always the thing that Donald Trump says whenever he definitely did notice something. But anyway. What then happened the next day, which I think got a bit lost in the mix, but was far more critical to this than I think anyone noticed at the time, was that Elon Musk's pal, who's called Jared Isaacman,
yes,
was nominated to run NASA.
That's right.
And Trump withdrew his support of this guy. Now, bear in mind how critical that is to the kind of business that Elon Musk does with the government. That, for me, right back then last Sunday, I thought this is going to blow up because there's a bit more going on here. But it really then went nuclear because he's got this, what Trump calls the big, beautiful spending bill. It's not. They're not grown-ups, are they?
No.
Going through, and then Elon Musk, of course, has got this enormous public forum as well as an enormous bank account in X, formerly Twitter. And the two just went off, basically, this week. And Musk then really escalated against Trump and made claims that are unfounded, but he has asserted without evidence that the president is mentioned in government documents relating to Jeffrey Epstein. He also shared a video. I mean, this is so playground, it's insane. Shared a video of Trump with Epstein, and then Trump's comeback was basically to say that Musk is high on ketamine all the time.
Yes.
And you're thinking, these two guys, like, one of them's got his finger on the nuclear button and he's too busy on, social media kicking off. But the other one has got the ability to leave a load of astronauts in space. And they're just both behaving like they need their heads knocking together.
But the fact, I also then thought, well, if Trump knew he was on ketamine the whole time, why did you put him in such a position of authority?
Well, you know the answer to that, because Musk spent more than $250 million getting Trump elected, and Trump is for sale to the highest bidder, who at that time was Musk, because Trump very much wanted to be in the White House. They've never been two people who have been aligned in their values or in their policies, but they are two people who both want the power that the White House gives them, and both had their own agendas for that. And Musk even said, I gave him all this money and he's not very grateful. I mean, what kind of admission is that you expect to be able to buy access to influence the power makers?
Well, I mean, welcome to the United States, I would suggest. I mean, so he said Trump should be impeached and J.D. Vance should be the replacement. Then Trump says, right, I'm going to cancel all of the Tesla and SpaceX owners' government contracts. Then Musk goes, oh no, right, I'm taking away my Dragon spacecraft. I'm not playing, I'm taking my toys. And obviously, the thing is, I was just looking at these shares in Tesla, for example. They dropped 14%. Meanwhile, of course, Trump then said, right, that Tesla you gave me, I'm selling it. I mean, it is...
Honestly.
I mean, it is...
They are so petty. By the way, I did notice, you remember I said about how Trump said, oh, I didn't notice the black eye. He then gave an interview when all this was going off, and Trump said, oh, well, we offered him makeup for that black eye, but he didn't want it. What, the black eye that you said you didn't notice? Anyway, that's just an aside because it really bugged me. But anyway,
I mean, but I mean that headline is so right on, isn't it? Babies at war. We knew, as you rightly say.
Just undignified. It's so
dreadful.
undignified.
It is. Right, let's move on and talk about this, because there is a ramification from this in the UK as well, because Kemi Badenoch, I think, is desperately trying to resuscitate her party. And she has said she's going to emulate Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump has signed a sweeping travel ban targeting citizens from 12 countries to stop foreign terrorists. This is him banning entry to the US for Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. He's also placed restrictions on travel from Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan and Venezuela, but there is not a full ban on that. I imagine that's played well in the States, has it?
Played really well to his base. This is the sort of thing that when Donald Trump was being elected, and actually he tried to do the first time around, you'll remember Donald Trump at that point, it was called his Muslim ban. But the first time around, he tried to do a travel ban like this, and then various other things like COVID sort of came along and interrupted, various plans, or actually made it a little bit easier to stop people entering the country en masse anyway. But this time around, he's brought in this travel ban to countries that, honestly, what you have to remember about America is that most people here don't travel outside the country. Most people here, a huge majority of people here, don't even have a passport. They couldn't point these places out on a map. And so the idea that sort of somebody from over there, this random place that they don't really know where it is, can't come here, plays really, really well into his base, where he has elevated all of these fears of foreigners, whether or not it bears bears up to the statistics of whether or not, you know, people from these countries are carrying out offences on American soil. I'm not entirely sure. I think they've got a lot more homegrown issues in terms of, you know, how people are dying in the United States. Certainly gun crime and healthcare outcomes would be two of those that would seem like a priority. But those don't make good headlines at a time when Donald Trump needs a few good headlines.
I mean, it's quite interesting. He says we will not let happen in the United States what's happening in Europe, and I think actually there is resonance there. What we're seeing is terrorist attacks across mainland Europe, which have been committed by foreign nationals that are in those countries, and they shouldn't be there.
And those things play really heavily on television, particularly right-wing media here. They play really, really heavily into those fears of people, I am going to say more in middle America, but that's a huge swathe of America and really Donald Trump's base. And incidentally, that sort of comes as he has a loss, really, because do you remember when he deported all of those people to El Salvador? And there was a guy amongst that who became sort of a bit of a lightning rod for whether or not due process was being followed. His name was Kilmar Garcia. And they said, well, we're not going to bring him back. We can't bring him back, even though he's been, you know, the courts say he's mistakenly deported. They had to bring him back to the US today, where he is going to stand trial for some federal charges against him. So what would have been perceived as this loss for the Trump administration has kind of been overwhelmed, really, in terms of how it plays in the world of spin, with having something that, you know, will play incredibly well for, and has played incredibly well for Trump's base.
Right, let's move on and talk about something hopefully a little more fun. American Dad, it's a cartoon I never really understood, but I know it has a big fan base.
Yeah, and I think you'll know Seth MacFarlane.
Yes, I do.
It's not from American Dad, then from Family Guy, but as well as kind of acting and creating, he's a singer. And don't groan, because I know there's this terrible thing when people are actors that you have to have a bit of a groan about them being a singer. But he's actually a 5-time Grammy nominee. And what he's found is this trove of unheard arrangements. In fact, I think someone from Frank Sinatra's family came to him. All of these like unrecorded and unheard arrangements that were written for Frank Sinatra, and he purchased these and he's recorded them, and these lost Sinatra arrangements. So actually, it's just really lovely to have these 12 songs that had kind of been lost in time, re-recorded, and I've had a listen to them, and actually his voice sounds fantastic on them. But if you're a Frank Sinatra fan, it's a bit of a treat amongst all of the terribly bad news that's around this week, isn't it? Yeah. Well, sorry to make you spit your tea.
Yeah, no, it's actually coffee. But you're right, Caroline. Look, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for staying up late to talk to me today. Caroline Faraday, that was today's Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Faraday.
Oh, dearie me. Hi, David. I noticed that Musk, when he was in the Oval Office, was wearing exactly the same that President Zelensky was wearing, but nothing was said. Good morning, Doc. 30 billion to the NHS. This is John. Well, we know where that's going, to the junior doctors, to their wage demands. Not rocket science. Great show. Thank you. OMG, David. This is Karen in Taunton. OMG. I didn't realise my concerns about levels of migration and the type of people coming in made me a radical terrorist. Should I hand myself in now? Well, I agree with you, Karen, because I think most people in this country are worried about the scale of mass migration into this country and the lack of integration in this country, but apparently we all have to refer ourselves now to prevent. Dale, good morning to you. Trump and Musk are the biggest social media trolls. They know what they are doing. It's to keep them both relevant. Howard in Suffolk, my neck of the woods. Piers was a brilliant guest. More, please. I would agree, totally. I'll let him know. Good morning, David. This is Michelle in Altrincham, one of our regulars. Good morning, Michelle. Great show as always, thank you. I really enjoy Piers' input. He's incredibly knowledgeable. I was especially interested in the dementia blood test. I would like to hear more about it on tomorrow's show. I'll tell Dean, who I'm looking at, my producer, that we should do that tomorrow. I think it's really important, actually. And also, would you want a blood test to tell you that you have Alzheimer's? That's, I mean, it's an interesting ethical concern, but I can tell you more about that, and we'll talk about the neurofibrillary tangles and the tau protein and the amyloid that I talked about. So we'll do that tomorrow. Joanna in Salisbury. Hi, David. Great show with Piers. Really insightful. Piers Pottinger pointed out Musk is unelected. With so much say. The unelected EU, are the same, and Starmer wants to get us back into it. Well said, Joanna. Well said. Gold star for that one. Keep all those messages coming in. This is funny. I was talking about, well, we think his name's Dean or Calvin, who is the star of that Rachel Reeves clip where she grinned, and he obviously wants to make buses, and he was forced to stand there for an hour and a half. I'm loving the show. This is Steve. I would like to know how Dean's job at the bus company is going. Oh, no. Does he have a vindictive manager making his life hell due to the perceived embarrassment to the company? I think he's actually put the bus company in a great light, actually. And then, I don't think I've done this one, Jeremy in Berkshire. Hi, David, your comment about 12-hour shifts. As an overnight carer, which is from 8 p.m. till 8 a.m, you are shattered by 7 a.m, and that's your busiest hour, washing and dressing everyone for a pathetic wage. I totally agree. This is the other point. We've got to sort out care, because it is not fair that we pay people so badly when you're doing such an important job, which is to look after people who need help, whether they are elderly people or people with chronic disabilities or whatever it is. And until we address that, we're not going to attract people into that sector. And then we also have to look at what we do in terms of residential care as well, and care of elderly people to get them out of hospital. So it's a very complicated one. I also, thank you for that, by the way, Jeremy. I also mentioned earlier about metropolitan elites who don't have any business experience at all. David, great show. This is Paul. Could you stop calling these metropolitan idiots elites? They are not. Good morning, David. This is Jackie Garside. Why is Streeting investigating or chucking 30 billion at the NHS when they're asking for redundancies and looking to privatise the service? On the same note, Mel says, I've heard in my area they're asking for voluntary redundancies and making redundancies in at least one hospital, including nurses. Why are we making frontline staff redundant when all we hear about is staff shortages? They need to be reducing costs from top down, not the staff that actually care for people and do the jobs for the services that the NHS is meant to provide. Keep all of those messages coming in, and actually on the back of that, is investing 30 billion quid in the NHS, is that the great panacea? Is that the most effective use of public funds? The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us on X as well at talkTV. After the break, it's going to be our head-to-head. Joining me this morning, Charlie Rowley, political commentator, and Mike Indian, journalist and commentator. That's all still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning!
The question has always been, you know,
how best to serve the country. I mean, I left UKIP to argue for a referendum. It was only because we got a referendum we were able to actually leave the European Union in the end. Nigel is very strong, very driven. Not everyone can keep up with him. I think you do tend to attract people from all sorts of walks of life when they're a new party. Not all of that works out.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 8:27. Just very quickly, good morning, Dr. David. I wanted to say I was left disabled by the NHS 8 years ago. I suffer from chronic pain and spend 80% of my time in bed and the other 20% in a wheelchair. I don't have many joys in my life, but watching your show always puts a smile on my face. That's very sweet. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That's Massimo in Great Bowden. Oh, golly. Massimo, thank you so much. And thank you for messaging as well this morning. Keep those messages coming in. I'm asking, is investing 30 billion quid in the NHS? This is Keir Starmer's great idea because, of course, he's very worried about the electoral prospects of Labour. He thinks, right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to chuck 30 billion quid at the NHS and we'll then be up to 200 billion quid and the money still won't hit the floor. Brilliant idea. Is that the best use of money? 0344 499 1000. Now, though, it's time for Head to Head. Head to Head. Well, joining me this morning, Charlie Rowley, political commentator, Mike Indian, journalist and commentator. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. Good morning. Shall we start with this, which is in the Telegraph, which I've lost now, but this story in the Telegraph. Oh, there we are. I knew I'd find it. You know, it's buried under my notes. Fears over migrants are a form of terrorism. This is the most insane story I've read in a long time because people around this country are saying, look, we've got far too much migration coming into this country, unfettered migration into this country. They also say, look, lots of people aren't assimilating, they aren't actually being part of this community. And according to this, concerns about mass migration is a terrorist ideology that requires intervention by Prevent programme. This is according to official documents. So for many of our viewers and listeners who are very worried about migration and the fact that many people aren't integrating, they should all go off to Prevent.
Where to begin?
Should we just go home?
I mean, latest net migration figures were still in the hundreds of thousands.
435.
We're a long way from David Cameron's promise to keep them down to the tens of thousands, but I mean, I don't often give credit to the previous Conservative government, but the changes implemented by the Sunak government did halve that, which is quite a significant change. Now, there will be a knock-on effect for that, particularly things like higher education, social care. But this leads to a bigger concern about the trends that we see in most Western societies, where we have ageing populations. So we have countries like Japan, for example, where that have remained largely, say, ethnically homogenous in that time. But they had to deal with a shrinking working age population, and countries like the US and the UK, which are projected at the current means to have an increasing share of migrants making up the share of that population, or certainly non-white population as well. And that leaves many people feeling concerned. Now, the attitudes differ between here and London. I obviously have a very, I'm a London metropolitan liberal elite. I'm going to think that migration tends to be a good thing. I'm going to own the label. I'm going to own the label. I'm up at this time on a Saturday morning. I'm feeling elite. What can I say? I'm feeling elite. But what we don't often consider is, I think, the integration side of this thing as well. I agree. What I would like to see, I think, is particularly, we have asymmetrical population distribution in this country, particularly in the southeast, is if we are going to have managed migration, is where are the areas where we can benefit from people going to communities, but how do we also ensure that they do integrate as well? And I think that is the key point to it. So, long way of saying, complicated question, but integration is key.
It is a complicated question, but there is no doubt that people are very worried about the scale of immigration coming into this country, which has a huge impact on our resources. But the bit for me that's much more important about that, the country has always relied on immigration. Immigration, when used appropriately, can be very good for this country. It's the lack of integration, as it says here, by certain ethnic and cultural groups. So what they're doing is they're sticking themselves in a silo by dressing differently, and I'm coming on to that reform story in a minute. By dressing differently, you're basically pointing an arrow at yourself saying, I'm different, I'm not integrating, I'm not part of your British society, and that is putting people's backs up.
Well, absolutely, I agree with everything that you've just said so far, but there's still time.
What, that he's an elite?
Well, that's it, yes. No, I'd put you there, you're right. That's absolutely
I'm feeling, yeah.
But I absolutely, I do agree with you, David. I mean, I think, look, just on the point of prevent, I mean, this is clearly mission creep and overreach. The prevent programme was supposed to, you know, just, I think, in very crude terms and just for people to understand, if you're at risk of becoming radicalised in some particular way, it's a way in which the authorities can report into a programme and you can be rehabilitated or prevented from going on to looking at other content, to be radicalised in a particular way that will be harmful to all of us. So that was the whole point of the programme. The idea that they're now saying that just having a thought about mass migration and you could be subject to that, well, I imagine the Prime Minister could be subject to it by calling us a nation of strangers, what he called the other day. So I think there's...
An island of strangers.
An island of strangers, sorry. So I think this is ridiculous by prevent. I think politicians of all persuasions should push back because it is just far too much that they're overreaching in a way in which I don't think they should be allowed to do. But the question you were coming on to was about integration, obviously, and the burqa.
Well, I might have been.
I assumed. I took that from the question, what else has dominated headlines this week? And I think there is room for a national conversation. I think it's a conversation about face coverings in general. But I have to say, I think when we talk about integration, yes, I do think the burqa prevents interaction. It is a physical barrier for looking at somebody's face and features, and we are quite an animated society as British culture. I think, you know, we tell stories, we like to joke, we like to drink, and so I think, you know, engaging in that way is one thing. The debate that I think took place probably about a decade ago about the burqa, where there was lots of fear and lots of worry about it because it was something that didn't identify with British cultural British heritage. I think that fear has not subsided, but I don't think it is the main issue now because if you're talking about effectively not being able to see somebody because of a face covering like the burqa, well, I think we've moved on slightly because the perpetrators in some of these societies that clearly haven't integrated, when we're talking about these Pakistani rape gangs, for example, these people operate in plain sight. So when we're talking about, and have done, and that's why there's been this whole furore about it, that's why there needs to be, I think, a national inquiry. So we've moved beyond minor maybe cultural differences, even though I agree that we should be banning all face coverings. But I don't think the burqa is the #1 issue that is about, you know, cultural integration.
But to be fair to Sarah Pochin, she said, and I saw her do it, she went through questions that were submitted by her own constituents, and so she asked one on behalf of the constituent. So clearly it is an issue for those people.
Well, we assume it was asked by the constituent.
That's what she said.
We have, you know, this.
That's what she said on her video, and I have no reason to doubt her. But anyway, the point is that actually I thought it was a pretty punchy question. Was she wrong to ask it?
I think it was designed to do exactly what was to generate headlines. But if I was, you know, a constituent of hers, I'd be far more worried about the state of public services than whether or not we were going to ban certain face coverings as well. And I think Charlie's got many valid points there about, you know, these particular things.
High praise indeed.
What it isn't going to do is allay concerns about integration. Too often we get caught up in politics on these single issues. And I feel the same about the net migration figures as well. We don't see the wider picture.
But perhaps the resonance for me, and I thought, wow, at least someone's talking about it. So in East London, I think it's a major problem.
I don't know. I live in East London, and I don't parts of it perhaps, but I don't.
Are you happy for people to go dressed in full burqas around Tesco? Because I feel uncomfortable with that.
No, I am. I think I live in quite a well-integrated part of London. You know, we see...
Are they integrated if you're wearing a burqa?
I think so, yeah. I mean, if you're shopping in the same supermarkets, yeah, I think so.
But they're covered. So they're not really integrated, are they?
I think, look, it depends on the definition of integration. We've had in this debate since, you know, I mean, as long as I've been, as long as my adult life's been going as well, different people are going to view integration in different ways. For me personally, living in my bit of East London...
Hang on a minute, isn't integration speaking the same language, acting in cultural and societal norms and values, dressing similarly? Isn't that part of integration?
I'd agree with the first two. I think, you know, 10 times about... I mean, David, you're wearing a big flowery shirt there as well. You can argue about integration. I don't see people walking around supermarkets wearing shirts like that as well.
I think it should be the law.
But I think the language is the key part. Yes. And this is why Labour are right to insist on, in the immigration reforms in the speech that Charlie referred to, about English, you know, being a standard. Too often you don't hear English spoken by the migrants as well, and I think that is the key issue. If you don't speak the same language, integration's a non-starter.
But my worry is, and I saw this when I was a doctor in Ealing, that we have too many people living in silos who don't speak any English, where they are kept in those silos as oppressive means by the men in that family. They are not allowed to integrate, and that, for me, is a major problem.
I think that's right, and I think, I was reading somewhere the other day that there are lots of Muslim countries that also don't prescribe the burqa, so, it is not something that is absolutely part of one's religion. And I think, look, we are very open, well, we have been for a long time. We've been very open, we've been very diverse, we've been very tolerant, and that's absolutely fine, and that's obviously right. I'm not challenging that. But I do think there's sometimes we lose our way, well, a lot of the time we lose our way about it being a two-way street. So, of course, if we were going to another country, all of us here around the table, because I think we're all respectful and, and pretty grown up and,
and wearing
understanding.
handles, which still warrants the listeners.
No, people don't like that.
Well, but you can leave your hat on.
And it's his birthday, by the way.
It's not.
Is it?
No,
Tom
it's not.
Jones.
Oh, right, I see, sorry.
It's not my birthday.
Not his birthday, Tom Jones.
Apparently. Well, there you go.
Yeah, you didn't know that.
It's not unusual to have a birthday.
My goodness.
Anyway,
It's too early, Charlie.
The point is that I was making is that if we were going anywhere that required a different kind of dress to a different country, we would all do it. We would respect it. However, we've been too far too tolerant.
When you go to Muslim countries, you cover your legs, for example, or your shoulders or your arms.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
so. Therefore,
or we'd take our shoes off. We were entering a religious building or anything like. We would do things that are required of us because that is a sign of respect, and we want. We want to integrate.
Deborah in Essex has just said, "Hi, David. On the subject of the burqa, it should be illegal. Facial recognition cameras are a waste of money."
Well, they would be, yes.
Yes, because you've got your face covered.
But my argument is I would extend it, not just, I wouldn't tie it, because I don't want to fall into this two-tier system.
But you're saying all face coverings, including motorcycle helmets and so on.
Yeah, if you're going to Tesco wearing a ski mask, you've got to wonder what's going on.
Exactly. If you want to protest, I'm not banning protest, but if you want to protest and you're wearing a face mask to then cause trouble, you have to be identified.
I totally agree with that. Right. So obviously, this brings us nicely into Zia Youssef leaving Reform UK. A lot of the press are reporting it was over that question that Sarah Pochin asked. It wasn't over that question that she asked. But just in terms of that, what does it do to Reform UK? Do you think it's the end of the road?
No, I don't. And I think what Reform are currently, I think, is a victim of their own success. They've been ahead in the polls for a long time. They've come on the back of a very good set of local elections. Obviously, scrutiny is heightened. But there is that victim of being a victim of your own success. I think there again is maybe slight overreach, because if you compared like for like, the Tory party I think have had about seven chairmen
in 3 years.
In 3 years. I don't think we'll see the same hysteria, although we should do, when, for example, let's say, Louise Haigh, when she had to resign from the cabinet, when Rachel Reeves, who I do think will eventually have to go, because I'm not quite sure what credibility you'll have left if you have to then break up your own fiscal rules and you have to raise taxes.
Well, look what she did to Paul Calvin standing behind her at the tractor factory.
Well,
yes. At the bus factory, sorry.
Yes.
Poor chap.
So, will there be the same set of hysteria with the Prime Minister losing his Chancellor when a political party, a new start-up that we know they'll be sort of, still, wet behind the ears, a few sort of, sharpened out the edges, they need to sharpen themselves up. So, losing the chairman, of course he was a big figure within the party, so that's why it's significant. But is it the end of the world? Of course it's not. I'm sure there's lots of talent in Reform where somebody will be able to replace him, and they'll do a great job there, and Reform will...
Or maybe get someone who's more of a team operator as well, because the impression I always got for Zia from the outside was that he operates as a lone wolf, and it doesn't look good in a week when your newest MP stands up to talk about an issue that does provoke the conversation about the face covering that you lose your most prominent British Asian man.
They weren't linked. As far as I'm aware, they weren't.
But it doesn't matter if they were or what.
Sure.
It's the power of coincidence, and Fraser Nelson's got a great column in the Times today about the nativist tendencies that he claims are pulling at Reform, championed by people like Rupert Lowe as well, which Nigel Farage has done his best in his various political vehicles to stave off. But he risks losing control of that narrative at the moment as well. And crucially, the party does not have the infrastructure to the same degree.
But your point is very valid, which is that obviously I know Zia, he's done a fantastic job in professionalising that party, but your point is valid. He very much is a lone wolf, and I think one of the other problems, and you both know from your time in political parties, you are dealing with the voluntary party over here, the professional party over here. You need someone who can actually make sure that the voluntary party feels loved, so that they go out in blinking dreadful weather and deliver leaflets and do stalls on the Market Hill and all that kind of stuff. And that is, it's not a science. There's an art to it to keep everyone happy within those organisations.
Well, most people aren't members of political parties. This is what we often in politics seem to forget. Even mass membership bodies in this country numbers in the hundreds of thousands, not the millions like they did in the the 1950s. And I've spoken to the fact is we haven't discussed the Conservatives yet. I think reflects a lot of the fact that their activist base is withering, partly due to age, but also I was talking to a former county councillor this week who described the relationship they had with the party, which is not a very democratic structure. They get the vote for the leader as an abusive relationship. And these are the people, like this guy would have been the future of the Conservative Party as well. Now, but he's not going to reform. He's getting out of politics altogether in that regard. So to some extent, you've got to ask yourself, yes, reform can democratise and put the structure in, but ultimately it's all going to come down to one question. Is Nigel Farage comfortable letting other people call the shots inside his party? At the moment, it's still his party, and I don't think he is.
Well, I think the reason why, again, the scrutiny has sort of been heightened is because, because of the recent success of reform, but also there is still that focus on, who is reform. Obviously, it's Nigel, and it seems to be Nigel's band and Nigel's party, because he is a very successful communicator, and there are still questions about who would form a reform government. And when you've only got a smallish team, so only 5 MPs, plus the Yusuf as the chairman, when you as the chairman are saying, I think something is pretty dumb of your own MP, whether it was about the question on its own about the burqa, but just asking a question that might not have been party policy, he referred to it as dumb publicly. That shows a sense of political ill-discipline on Zia's part, and that's why I think reform do need to be, when the spotlight's on you, they need to have the political discipline, which you were talking about, which motivates members and motivates the public to continue to back you.
Gentlemen, thank you for the moment. Charlie and Mike will return after... They will return after this. Right, this is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 8:46. We're in the middle of head-to-head. Joining me this morning, Charlie Rowley, political commentator, Mike Indian, journalist and commentator. So, we haven't spoken about Kemi Badenoch. Now, she has declared war on activist judges at home and abroad. She says Britain is being mugged. A broken legal system has allowed sex offenders to avoid deportation, eco-fanatics to block roads, terrorists to walk free. She said the Conservative government, when it comes in, let's see if that happens, will bring an end to lawfare, which is turning the UK into the world's softest touch for asylum seekers. And here's the line. This is likely to mean leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. Now, she has obviously appointed Lord Wolfson to undergo some detailed research into the reaches of the ECHR, the interpretation of the ECHR, and whether we should leave the ECHR. Piers Pottinger, and I think was absolutely spot on by saying she hasn't made any decisions. She's kicked the can down the road. And I assume the idea is the report comes out and she says, right, I agree with that.
Trying to give credibility to a policy by having an independent commission is nothing new for parties. And if she's in the first, 12 months or more, hopefully 12 months of her leadership, if she doesn't, unless she doesn't last much longer. The issue is, though, that this has been talked about, since the Conservatives were in the first third of their last time in government.
I think even longer.
I think we might hit net zero before we leave the ECHR, and according to the Tories at this rate. It's such a non sequitur for me. It's just, she's talking about repealing laws when there's far more pressing issues at the moment.
Or at least have a policy. Well, look, we're leaving, we're not leaving.
You can't appear strong when you have your shadow chancellor and then yourself standing up and saying, I will do better as leader of the opposition. I haven't been good so far, but I will do better. I will improve. That's basically just inviting the sharpening of knives from the 120
She just doesn't seem very politically astute. You've got Hermer, who basically compared those people who want to leave the ECHR to Nazis, so you're pushing it at an open door there with Labour. You've got Reform UK, who said categorically, we're leaving the ECHR, we're a grown-up country, we can do things ourselves. And Badenoch saying, well, I think I'll ask a friend, is what she's saying, isn't she?
Well,
I'm having an inquiry.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the two things I think, look, I think everything so far. Just on the point about people getting better over time, that is true. I think that is true to say that
Yes, but you don't say it, Charlie. I'm sorry, you don't stand up and say, yes, I'm going to do better, because basically she's making the problem about her. I mean, I'm not saying that a bad leader of the opposition is not something that I'm not pleased about, but it does also mean that we saw this with Corbyn and his prime ministers, that people like Boris Johnson got away with a lot because they were dealing with a very soft touch as well.
Well, I don't overly disagree, but it shows a bit of humility to say, look, it's quite tough at the dispatch box, and I'm going to get better and watch this space. And I think there's an element of but I think it's right to say that, but I think it's of a bygone age, because you don't get time in politics. And if there is somebody who appears to be a better orator, a better policymaker, a better activist, a better engager with the membership, then you're stuffed. But she has got that problem. But also on the EHCR proposal to somebody to look at it. I don't think that, as frustrating as that will be, I think, for politicos and the Conservative base that are probably tearing their hair out to say, just leave. Everyone else has come to that conclusion.
You're in opposition, you can make whatever policy you want. Exactly. It's not going to become law.
I think this is, and the question is, well, hold on, it's a political one to leave the HCR, or at the minute, if it's British judges that are making these calls that are wrong, well, then you can tighten up the British legal system and provide more guidance to them without having to leave the EHCR. So I think, depending on your view, if it's all about the EHCR, then of course come out.
Well, the report's going to come back and say, actually, we don't need to leave the ECHR, we need to tighten up the interpretation of the ECHR by the judges. That's probably what it will say.
Yeah,
and then how do you enforce that?
Well, she could say, I think that's a great thing, and I welcome that report, and we will tighten up things on the judges' side, but to be absolutely sure that, we need to leave the HCR, things like Article 8, or reform it in a way. Or disapply. But what she's doing, I think, by having this report commissioned, is not to appeal to the base necessarily. I think it's to appeal to the wider public. So the public that aren't necessarily, because you'll get a lot of people, by the way, you get a lot of Tories that might be voting Lib Dem who've left the party.
Yes.
So to appeal to a wider base to say, I'm pragmatic about this, I know everybody's got passions either side, but I'm showing to the wider public, not just my base, we're going to have an internal review or
She's not going to last, is she?
I think she's
getting better.
By her own admission.
The one thing that I would say, honestly, if she was watching this program or if her team were listening, is that you don't have time on your side.
Listening.
Well, of course they are. Of course, it's Saturday morning on radio, of course they are. But you know, don't play to the as if you've got time. I know that this was set up as a long-term project, renewal 2030, and she's doing a lot of things that will be helpful to the Conservative Party to rebrand, to regroup, but you don't have time. You've got to go hell for leather. You've got to be seen all the time. You've got to do all of the things that you might not even have time to do. You know, turn up to association events. You've got to be on the phone to your chairman. You've got
to alienate your base as well.
You've got to go on holiday or possibly get up before 10 in the morning.
Well, I don't know about
allegedly.
I don't know about those things, but
I was just reminded of the rebrand, like David Cameron when he came out with a tree. I thought that was the biggest own goal he ever did.
But it's still there. I mean,
the tree is still there.
The tree. I mean, you say it was the biggest own goal. The tree is still there. I mean, you know, he might have. He might have moved away from the. The Conservative Party's lost its electoral flexibility, but it's also having the same problem that Labour have, that they're hemorrhaging votes to both sides. Both the main parties have this problem. The Tories need to look back to the blue wall, first of all, to shore up that traditional base, because the Lib Dems did not win these seats by significantly large amounts. People would come back. Remember, the last election turnout was down, in the same way that Labour need to look to the red wall as well. And they risk, you know, Labour don't want to get distracted by the Greens. The Tories want to focus on the Lib Dems and not reform.
OK, I have to go to a break. After the break, we're going to be talking about the NHS. Still loads more to come. Don't go anywhere.
The question has always been, you know, how best to serve the country. I mean, I left UKIP to argue for a referendum. It was only because we got a referendum we were able to actually leave the European Union in the end. Nigel is very strong, very driven. Not everyone can keep up with him. I think you do tend to attract people from all sorts of walks of life when they're a new party. Not all of that works out.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Tom. My goodness, we haven't got much time left. Keir Starmer is going to stake his political fortunes on the NHS next week. He thinks the answer to their ailing polling problems is to throw 30 billion quid at the health service at the expense of other public services. Charlie, is this going to cut the mustard? More money to the NHS, 30 billion quid. That takes us to 200 billion quid where the service is falling apart.
The reality is, no, it won't cut the mustard. I think you need to do a bit more reform within the NHS. A bit more to cut out the waste.
They're
and actually
scrapping NHS England. I mean, you know, that's a pretty big reform.
Well, exactly, to make savings, because they're not treating any more people, but they just seem to be throwing more money at it year after year. But of course, politically, it's a headline. It's the right thing to do because, as Mike was saying earlier, just before the break, you know, political parties should now need to play to their bases. I think when you are down in the doldrums in the polls, like the Tories are with the HCR, that's going to be something that the True Blue members can get behind. Labour Prime Minister throwing money at the NHS, that will be something that wows the crowd, the backbenches.
Will it?
For the backbenches of the Labour Party, absolutely.
Like that, will they?
Yes, of course they will. Yes,
It'll make them feel like that's why they became Labour MPs.
Exactly.
41% of our spending, the NHS.
The trouble is that each year the NHS has a funding shortfall. So this is a 2.8% increase in real terms. So at the moment, you know, but the trouble is with in this uncertain world where the politics of inflation has returned with a vengeance, a sudden global spike in inflation, whether it's Trump tariffs or gas wholesale prices, renders that...
Or a Labour Chancellor messing up the economy.
That hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet. Inflation went up. It went up. It was coming down under the... It went up under her. It's stable.
It was coming down under the Tories.
It came down. It came down significantly under that Dishy Rishi. Remember him?
I do remember him, yeah. I mean, so finally, and I have to go to a break, is this going to cut the mustard or just play to the base?
I think so, yes. I think, you know, if they hadn't done it, we'd be sitting here going they're neglecting the NHS, you know. But I think the other thing they need to do is make good on the promises in the strategic defence review.
I just don't think people care to that degree. I just think
they care. They care about if they get doctor's appointments on time.
They do, but that goes back to your point of actually fundamentally
the NHS is consistently the top 2 or 3 issues voters care about. So of course they're going to spend money on it.
The answer isn't more money.
No.
Yes, it is.
And the answer is not more money.
And not when you have thousands of people that come into the country illegally that get top of the queue of dentistry, that get top of the queue of their GP.
No one gets a dentist appointment, though. I'm sorry. No one can get a dentist. It doesn't matter who you are.
That's your problem, isn't it?
Doesn't matter who you are.
Right. I'll take this conversation offline now. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Charlie Rowley, political commentator. Mike Indian, journalist and commentator. That was this morning's Head to Head. Head to Head. Matt and Grimsby, good morning. Reviewing leaving the ECHR. Surely this has been said many times before. I don't believe a word she says. Just leave in capital letters. David, Gawain Towler talked a lot of common sense yesterday about reform and the question of who would hold the various cabinet roles. He rightly said there will be some stars who come through as more and more council seats are gained. If reform win a general election, there will be plenty of people to choose from for a cabinet. So why the obsession with that question now? It's nonsensical. Great show as always. That's Nicola in Norfolk. I'm disappointed to see Youssef go, but I think we are conflating different roles. Chairman is a managerial role. It seems he was trying to do too much of the groundwork of professionalising the party himself. That needs to be someone behind the scenes who we never hear from. That's Sean in Bridlington. Don't go anywhere. This is Weekend Breakfast. Tons more still to come.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10p, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60p. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
a couple of weeks.
Ritz.
Couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. 9 o'clock already, 3 hours in, 1 hour to go. This is Weekend Breakfast live from London. I'm David Bull, and thank you very much indeed for your company. The weather forecast, terrible. Very, very wet indeed. But great news for you. It's National Chocolate Ice Cream Day today. Now, vanilla may be considered the most popular flavour, but ever since the crazy Italians froze hot chocolate for some reason in 1692, chocolate has always been a close contender, and today celebrates that. It is National Chocolate Ice Cream Day.
And all because of a chocolate ice cream cone. And all because of a chocolate.
Okay, that's quite enough of that. Also, it's National Bubbly Day today. Now you're talking. Sparkling wine, affectionately known as bubbly, is perfect for celebrations because of its cork-popping goodness. Crisp, fruity flavours combined with delightful bubbles to create a celebratory drink. Perfect when enjoyed alone, with appetizers, a meal, alone, or alone. It's National Bubbly Day.
You've got me popping champagne.
And finally, it's National VCR Day. Do you know what that is? Of course, it's a day celebrating the videotape. Celebrating this day is simple. All you have to do is dig out your old VCR player, of which I have two actually in my attic, and your tapes, and then you just scroll down memory lane. So there you are, National VCR Day.
The pause button's broke on my video.
Oh, crikes. And then the thing came up, and then the tape came out, and it was like spaghetti everywhere. And then, actually, if you used to play them back, the picture quality went down every single time. Oh, and then it came off on the heads. Do you remember that? And then you got bars, and then you had to clean the heads. Yeah. That's sad. And you got fined from the video shop, from Blockbuster, for not taking your tapes back. So there you are. I'll show you some of my tapes later on. Also, I'll be talking to Steve Denyer about that as well. I've forgotten where we are now. Oh, let's move on to this hour's Fascinating Facts.
Today's Fascinating Facts.
Right, OK. On this day in 1628, the Petition of Rights, one of England's most famous constitutional documents and of equal value to the Magna Carta. It was granted royal assent by Charles I. It set out specific liberties of the subject that the king was prohibited from infringing, including restrictions on non-parliamentary taxation, the forced billeting of soldiers, imprisonment without cause, and restrictions on the use of marital law. On this day in 1811, the birth of James Young Simpson. Who was he? Well, he discovered the anaesthetic properties of chloroform and successfully introduced it for general medical use. I mentioned Tom Jones earlier because on this day in 1940, it was the birth of Tom Jones. He was born in Pontypridd. He sold over 100 million records, had 36 top 40 hits in the United Kingdom, 19 in the United States. And I'm going to give you one bonus one as well. On this day in 2019, Theresa May officially stepped down as leader of the Conservative Party. She remained as Prime Minister until the 22nd of July, when her successor was announced. And those are this hour's and today's Fascinating Facts.
Weekend mornings we're taking flight. With David Bull, everything feels right. Weekend breakfast, shining like the sun.
Good morning Exactly 6 minutes past 9 on Saturday, June the 7th. So you were right about those words. Weekend mornings, we're taking flight, and that's the bit I didn't understand. With David Bull, everything feels right. Well, I hope so, indeed. Very good morning to you. Lots going on in the papers. This is just unbelievable. The Daily Telegraph this morning, we've spoken about this extensively this morning. Fears over migrants are a form of terrorism. Yes, so apparently, if you're worried about the state of this country, and the fact is that we have far too many people coming into this country because immigration is off the charts, and if you're worried about that, and you're also worried about certain cultures and religions not integrating into mainstream British society, you should be referred to Prevent. I mean, honestly, it's not worth the paper that's written. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Also, this big story on the Times, a squeeze on services to pump cash into the NHS. This is Rachel Reeves. Keir Starmer will stake his political fortunes on the NHS next week. He's going to give the health service 30 billion quid. He thinks this is going to solve all the problems. And, of course, that means that other services are going to suffer. This is the spending review. He's going to be looking at that. Services from police to councils will be squeezed as the health budget grows more than twice as fast as overall spending and leads to painful compromises elsewhere. I'm asking this morning, is investing 30 billion quid into the NHS the most effective use of public funds? Is that going to shore up your vote for the Labour Party? The number 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. You can message us as well on X at talkTV. Lots going on politically, and joining me now is James Heal, who is the political correspondent at The Spectator. James, always good to talk to you.
Always nice to see you, David.
You've been very busy, actually. I've been reading all your articles in The Spectator this week. Let's just start, shall we, with the by-election. Labour narrowly won that by-election in Scotland. Actually, when that news broke, I woke up and I was actually quite surprised that Labour had managed to hold on to that. Support for the SNP had collapsed, and as Sarwar said, this was an incredible result in Hamilton, Larkhill and Stonehouse, taking that seat from the Nationalists. When you actually look at those numbers, and we do have those numbers, when you look at the percentages, whether you look at the actual total number of votes or whether you look at the percentages, I mean, all of the parties down. Labour down 2%, SNP down a walloping 16.8%. And that translates here, as you can see, into Labour going down 3,600 votes, the SNP down nearly 9,000, Reform going up 7,000, Conservatives down 4,700, Greens just up 695, and also Lib Dems down. James, how do you... I mean, obviously Labour is saying this is a great win for us, that the Labour Party is you know, reaching its ascendancy in Scotland. I don't think that's entirely true. They were lucky.
Yes, I mean, a number of factors can be true at once. I mean, first of all, I think it's a testimony to Labour had a good ground game, and Scottish Labour always has been a formidable force within the UK Labour Party. I think also the SNP underwhelmed. They were trying to frame this contest as a two-horse race between them and Reform, and of course, third horse now come through the middle. And third of all, I think, you know, Reform were hoping to come second here. They might be a little disappointed at that, but they can take heart from the fact very strong performance, 26% of the vote, and of course, I think less than 2,000 votes within the margin of the SNP. So all those three things, and of course, the Conservatives slumping to just 6%, barely keeping their deposit. I think it's going to be a really interesting set of elections for next year, Holyrood, in May 2026.
I mean, that's pretty embarrassing if you nearly lose your deposit, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, massively. I mean, the Scottish Tories right now, I think, are in a real sort of mess. Not as bad as the Welsh Tories, who, you know, are facing, I think, near wipeout at elected level at Cardiff Bay and at Westminster. They've got no MPs now. They might get no MSs in the Senate. But the Scottish Conservative Party in a bit of a rut right now, trying to work out how to campaign on and getting caught in the crossfires between some reformers, the exciting new right-wing populists, and also, obviously, the votes in terms of unionists versus nationalists with the SNP and Liberal Democrats as well.
Do you think it was a mistake for Swinney to say this is a contest between the SNP and Reform?
I think there was a clear attempt to try and sort of split up the progressive vote and try and get as much of that off Labour. I think that perhaps he always... The risk is, of course, that if you then lose, you look like you were sort of expectation management. I think maybe you could have, you said, you know, there's always been a traditional sort of Labour heartland area. We will face a tough battle. But I think what he was trying to do was try and get enough of the progressive votes. Clearly, I think it's a massive reminder of the difference between narrative and analysis on the ground, which that everyone thought, Reform were going to surge, that the SNP were doing really well and Scottish Labour were finished. And actually, it turns out there's a lot of pockets of resistance in terms of Scottish Labour support. So overall, I think, there will be some people, in HQ right now in Bute House in Holyrood saying, how on earth did we get this so badly wrong?
And of course, Keir Starmer didn't even appear, did he? Not once.
Well, I think very sensible move. I mean, this is much as Anna Salma's victory, much more than it is Keir Starmer's. And I think Scottish Labour played the game very well in distancing themselves from number 10, who are pretty unpopular right now north of the border.
So Keir Starmer would have been an electoral liability, would he, if he turned up?
Yeah, I mean, he's more unpopular now in his ratings the last time I saw than, say, for instance, Nigel Farage. This is, of course, in a country which typically used to vote Scottish Labour in their droves. And I think, talking to some MPs and members of the MSPs in the Scottish Parliament in the Labour Party, they were very much keen when they had their conference about 2 months ago to purely distance themselves from Westminster, make it all about Holyrood and try and get past the rows around benefits, Gaza, all that kind of stuff, which the SNP have been trying to milk for all their worth.
Let's talk about Reform UK, because obviously they did well in that election. But as you know, Zia Youssef has resigned as the Reform UK chairman after this row about banning the burqa. As far as I'm aware, those two things are not actually related. But Mr Youssef gave Nigel Farage, the party leader, 10 minutes warning before announcing on X, "I no longer believe working to get a Reform government elected is a good use of my time and hereby resign the office." This came also after Zia Youssef said a call by 2 Reform MPs for the burqa to be banned was done. Let's start with that question from Sarah Pochin. I thought it was pretty strong, her question. There is no doubt that Nigel Farage would have seen that question before it was asked. Was it the right question to ask as your first question, do you think, as a newly elected Member of Parliament?
No, I don't. I think if I was a newly elected Parliament for Reform, my first question would have been around the boats. We're about to have a long summer where we've already hit 1,000 a day last week for 1 point. You're going to see presumably something like 20,000 arrive over the next 3-4 months or so. Maybe if she'd given a figure for the number of arrivals, can the Prime Minister assure us there'll be more or less than last year? That would have been something you could clip up and say that it's something very much of concern. I think the burqa is a much more peripheral issue than the ones of small boats. And I think I would struggle to see the kind of knock-on consequences of that. And of course, if it's not the party isn't agreed on that, unlike small boats, which the party is, I think it obviously leads to one about internal divides rather than actually putting some pressure on the Prime Minister, which is the whole point of PMQs.
So let's talk about this Zia Youssef. Of course, Nigel Farage gave an interview to another news channel on the back of that. I actually thought he answered the questions incredibly well. He said, look, Zia Youssef has worked incredibly hard. He has professionalised the party. There is no doubt of that. And the party has grown exponentially. I think one of the things that has come back time and time again is that possibly, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, he lacked the interpersonal skills with some of the people in the organisation. And as you know, what you have to do as a party is hold the voluntary party together with the professional side of the party. And when you do that, the voluntary side particularly, you've got people giving up their time for free to deliver leaflets or do stalls in village fetes or whatever it is, or in town centres in terrible weather. And you have to make those people feel loved and feel respected and to feel part of that political machine.
Absolutely, David, you've summed it up perfectly. There is always a tension between politics, which we all profess to be as professional as possible, but the reality is it's a passion project where it's not just the head issue, it's a heart issue as well. I think Zia did incredible work in terms of making Reform formidable electoral machine, obviously coming top with those local elections, 30% of the vote, 10 points clear of Labour, 15 clear of the Conservatives. Really impressive stuff. But as Nigel Farage said, he was a Goldman Sachs ex-banker, someone who perhaps had a real sort of hire farm culture. You're always one step closer to the door, 16-hour days. And I think that he did make some enemies, not with Nigel, but some people around Farage's office and his team. And I do think there were always some sort of grumbles in the background about tensions. That being said, I would also make the point that, he's clearly got a lot on in his life in terms of what he can choose to do with it. The story of businessmen in British politics is not always a happy one. You think about the people brought in, people like Archie Norman for the Conservatives, people like Alan Sugar for Labour.
Oh, yeah, well remembered.
Yeah, well, misspent youth. I mean, the point is it's part of a broader story, right? Which is that businessmen like to pull a lever and things work. Politics is very different, as you say there.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Where does this leave Reform? And one of the questions I keep being asked is, and I had various journalists ringing me yesterday saying, does Reform need to replace that chairman immediately? Your thoughts on that? I mean, there is no immediate sort of rush because there are no elections that are forthcoming, but equally, I suppose you don't want to leave a void.
I think two things. I think one of which is there's a strong argument to split what Yusuf was doing in terms of party machinery from his Doge functions. I have to say, I think I'd be less concerned about the party role and more about the work of UK Doge. Now, maybe a cynic will say, actually, look, having won those local elections, UK Doge doesn't need to do that much. But Yusuf took a real interest in the minutiae of that, and it will take someone similarly focused on the detail for that particular role. So one of which is potentially splitting up the two roles. And the second of all is finding the right person. I don't think there's any need for an immediate rush. I think the key thing is to take the time. And I think, look, Reform needs to attract good, qualified people to come and speak for it, to help share the burden of all the work. You need to make assurances that, look, some of the stuff that Yusuf suffered, for instance, some of the briefing about him perhaps, and some of the abuse he got online, how will that be different for anyone new coming in? So some assurances to attract the right quality. I think there's an argument for taking a bit of time and not rushing to fill the void.
I think that is the view the party is taking, actually, is to split the role, which was becoming increasingly enormous. But that is the vestige of the party also getting bigger, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. And look, this is the problem of a small startup. As Yusuf like to talk in terms of a startup, and scaling up is always going to be a challenge in any industry, particularly when you're going from sort of a back office of, say, I don't know, 10 people to 40 people, and all the different things about branches, etc. These are teething problems. Reform overall, I think, can brush this off. But I think it was noticeable that Nigel Farage's tone was very much one of sorrow rather than bitterness and anger that we saw with the Rupert Lowe row a few months ago.
Do you think it's damaged Reform UK?
I think it will not damage its standing in the polls. I do think at an elite level, it will make it harder for good people to come in. And I think, I spoke to Tory MPs and, Labour MPs to an extent, and they always said that, Yusuf was someone who I think they respected and, was someone different, looked different, had a different background, and clearly was doing good work on the party. So I think that it will damage them, but it won't in any way prove fatal or anything like that.
OK, let's talk about Kemi Badenoch if we can. She has declared war on activist judges at home and abroad. She says Britain is being mugged. A broken legal system has allowed sex offenders to avoid deportation, eco-fanatics to block roads and terrorists to walk free. She says, I'm going to bring an end to lawfare, which is turning the UK into the world's softest touch for asylum seekers. And then this is the killer line. This is likely to mean leaving the ECHR. So she hasn't made a decision. She's basically got this barrister, Lord Wolfston, the Shadow Attorney General, Helen Grant, the Shadow Solicitor General, to lead an inquiry into another report into what, the effects of the ECHR. Does Kemi Badenoch actually have an opinion on anything?
I think the working assumption of a lot of people around Kemi Badenoch is that the UK should leave the ECHR, that she'll probably commit to leaving the ECHR at that Tory conference. But she's also very aware, David, of course, we've just been through the Brexit wars. How many years did we spend talking about Northern Ireland? The Good Friday Agreement is tied to the ECHR. So I think although some Tories are saying, look, come on, we all expect to leave the ECHR, the key thing about is getting the right message in place, because let's face it, we don't want to, if Conservatives win the next election, we don't want to spend 4 or 5 years discussing the intricacies of the Good Friday Agreement and how to help Northern Ireland not go into civil war again.
Well, that's right. And of course, you see, there's no clear blue water because Reform UK has made it clear they want to leave the ECHR. Now, if Kemi Badenoch then says, I'm going to leave the ECHR, what does that do to the how do I say this? The melange of different groupings within the Conservative Party.
So I think, obviously, the Conservatives need to make sure they carry their party with them, and that's a much broader coalition than the Reform Party in terms of kind of where it all stands on these different issues, and that can be a strength and a weakness, as we discussed. I think, look, it's about a question of approach, really. I mean, Kemi Badenoch seems to have a much more sort of bottom-up approach in the sense of, like, we will get to the point where we reach these conclusions and bring everyone together with us, whereas some would have preferred the sort of generic approach of, we are leaving, let's spend the next 4 years working out how to do that. There's arguments for both. I think the key thing is going to be in terms of the Tories stressing their professionalism and saying, we've got a credible plan. Look, they'll be pointing at what's happening with Yusuf and other stuff and saying, look, these guys are a bunch of clowns. Do you want to throw your lot in with them?
Is she safe, Kemi?
No. I mean, look, she is having a difficult time in the polls. She's facing a really difficult set of elections, as I've said about in Wales and Scotland. So she is safe, I think, in the immediate term, but clearly, she will need to prove her critics wrong. And I've reported on the fact that they want to have a step change. You saw the speech yesterday. That came a day after Mel Stride's speech a day before that. They are stepping up. The key thing, of course, is assuring the party, give us a bit more time, we'll get through next year. And after that, they can start to build maybe a bit longer term over the next 18, 24 months.
James, always good to talk to you. Thank you ever so much for joining me on a Saturday. James Hill there, political correspondent at The Spectator. Lots of calls coming, lots of messages coming in as well. Let's take some of your calls, actually, after this break. This is Weekend Breakfast, and it's already 9:21. Good morning.
The question has always been, how best to serve the country. I mean, I left UKIP to argue for a referendum. It was only because we got a referendum we were able to actually leave the European Union in the end. Nigel is very strong, very driven. Not everyone can keep up with him. I think you do tend to attract people from all sorts of walks of life when they're a new party. Not all of that works out.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is
This is Talk 9:25. So many messages. Peter, good morning. Hello, David. I've learnt something new every day. Today I learnt that wanting my country to not lose its cultural heritage makes me a terrorist in some deluded idiot's eyes. Where did the whole thing go wrong? Very good point. Thanks, Peter, for that. Good morning, David. This is Brian in Worthing. Good morning. Well, 1 minute I'm far right. Now I've just discovered I'm a terrorist as well. I think Prevent are going to be extremely busy monitoring millions of people, don't you? Just another scare tactic from the left. It doesn't work anymore. That's Brian in Worthing. Good morning. So Zia Youssef has gone, but we still have the best leader in Nigel Farage. As long as he stays, it's onwards and upwards for Reform UK. That's John in Wallington, one of our regulars. Good morning, John. Thank you for that. Have a lovely weekend. This is Amanda in East Yorkshire. Very kind. Thank you very much. You too. On the subject of the burqa, this is Kay. Do these ladies work? I live in West Yorkshire. I see lots of burqa-wearing ladies out and about, but I never see them working. They aren't represented in the shops, the supermarkets and public amenities. So what do these ladies do? More importantly, who is paying for their lifestyle? I love your show, as always. Thank you, Kay. That's very sweet. David, this is Brian. I took my grandson to the local swimming bars and was shocked to see, I assume, a Muslim family get into the pool. And the mother was wearing a full burqa and a face veil as well. Surely that can't be right, and it's very unhygienic as well. Brian, thank you. Matt. David, great show as always, thank you. We have to remember we talk about ageing population and needing migration, but we also have to consider how AI and technology is also removing jobs, especially administrative and non-physical, low-skilled employment as well. Let's take a call now. Iris is in my county in Suffolk. Good morning, Iris.
I am, David, I am. Yes,
Where are you then in Suffolk?
Well, I'm at Bury St Edmunds.
Oh, OK, fine. Very nice.
And I was smiling as I'm heading for a bit of campaigning. We've got a local council election in the town, and it really resonated as it's pouring with rain. And I'm a pensioner, but I'm turning out for the party.
And so I assume that's Reform UK, is it?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Zia leaving. I was sad to see him go, but. As someone pointed out, you know, when the Tories started up, when Labour started up a million years ago, there'd have been lots of fallings out, and we've done brilliantly as a party to get where we've got to in the last 10 months.
And you really understood the resonance of when I said actually the volunteers just need to be thanked and loved, because it's pretty soulless, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I am a member. My husband and I are members of the party. I don't want to be thanked. I'm going to turn out anyway. And I've met some of our local group. There's a great bunch of people. People are so passionate, so wanting the basics to be right again in our country. And it's great to turn out and support reform.
And so do you then get together afterwards in the pub or anything, or have a coffee and warm up?
I haven't actually campaigned at that point with them this time, but I will probably go and have a nice cup of coffee, as it's still raining, David.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And you think that Zia leaving isn't going to affect reform at all?
Not one jot. We care about Nigel. We think Nigel's done a wonderful job. Who else could have done what he's done in 10 months? Who else in politics? And while Nigel's at the helm, we've got Richard Tice. Fantastic that we've got Sarah Poach in now. You know, the councils are beginning to, they're going to change, hopefully, how the counties work for us, get our bang for our buck. And it's onwards and upwards.
Iris, look, have a great day. I hope you don't get too wet as well, and make sure you do have that coffee as well. Thank you so much for that. Anne is in on the line from Sussex. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning to you, David. Thank you again. Always an interesting show.
Oh, thank you.
Really. I've sort of become addicted.
Oh, good.
The reason I rang is because of the health service. And, in fact, I've just been writing about it this morning. Because we're told that care in the community doesn't happen. The NHS... I led the campaign to save our A&E in 2000, which taught me a lot. And what happened? The cottage hospitals closed. I can name 3 care homes for older people, all closed down. All the older people are often in our hospital beds, because then we did have care in the community, by the way, and now we haven't got it. But I want to know, David, where has all the money gone? They sold the farm, they closed these buildings. That brought in a lot of money to the NHS, and now we're told that they need to put in more money, and it doesn't go down to where it's needed at the front line.
No.
And I know you know a lot about this. I was in the hospital last week. The care I received from the staff was very good, I have to say. We can't keep labelling it all as dreadful.
No.
I was amazed at the care. And what I want is to stop the chief execs and those pen pushers getting I'm sorry, you have Roy, I won't say his second name, on a lot here.
Oh, yeah.
I battled with him in 2000, fighting not to close our A&E, which they didn't in the end. And he was saying why they should. And it's the people who've now got their big fat pensions from doing some government's job of closing all the buildings that really provided the care. But as a throwback, I will, where did all the money go from the sale of all those properties?
Well, I think one of the things, and I see this when I go into hospitals, which is you're dealing with very archaic buildings that actually aren't fit for purpose, which are being constantly patched up. And of course, the NHS is ever expanding in terms of what it is trying to do and the services it's trying to provide. I mean, there's a very strong argument that actually what the NHS is doing is spending an enormous amount of money, basically just trying to keep the current situation alive. And maybe that's not the way to think about this. I do think we need to work out what we do with elderly people discharged from hospital, because once that's sorted, then everything becomes much easier.
Well, it does become easier, but you're very well aware, David, how many people came into the country in the past 2 or 3 years at least, and many of them need more care. So whatever we put in is never going to be enough with all the numbers of people. And why the devil can't we copy France and other countries? You come into this country, you can't get treated. I couldn't get into the ambulance in France when I was nearly dying until they knew that I'd got my insurance. And here, anyone seems to come into the country and they can get treatment from the NHS without turning a hair.
Now, that's a really interesting point, actually, because we are meant in hospitals to look at the source where the patient comes from and then back bill. I'm not convinced that always happens. And, of course, if you don't have the documentation, then what happens? You get the treatment. And, of course, there's no back billing.
Of course. There is so much that is wrong, but no government seems to focus on what we really need to do. It's always, a battle.
But this is the problem for me, which is it's a political football. And what we need to do is to take it away from the politicians, have a 20-year strategy of what we're going to do. But I do think the public's feeling is changing towards the NHS.
Well, it is changing, but I don't want it to change for the worse.
No, I'd agree.
Was it Alan Milburn or one of them?
Yes.
No, when Labour were in, and they did put money in, but only 5% went into the front line. But many of those people set up their own private NHS companies to do very well out of the NHS. And when I was meeting with all these leaders, they were going to America to look at their systems. And I said, why didn't you go to Europe? What's the matter with you? Because America, and you probably, again, you would know more than I do, but what was held, patient support, whatever, became something that we paid the Americans for in the end.
It's such a huge problem. Anne, thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. That's Anne in Sussex there. Good morning, David. Steve from Middlesbrough. On the prevent thing, they can't prevent the real terrorists, so they're going for the easy targets to keep themselves relevant, just like our two-tier criminal system. Hi, David. I love the show. This is Paul in Suffolk. Good morning to you. I seem to remember the European Parliament mentioning negative speech about migrants becoming illegal is today's headline in the Telegraph. The start of this campaign may keep this up. There's a lot of talk going on in Europe about what can happen in terms of turning the boats back. Of course, we've seen this week the French changing their rules about how they can intercept some of those boats, I think up to 300 metres from the shore. If that is to happen, then that would be quite a game changer. Lots of other messages coming in. Hi, David. Great show. Thank you. This is Amanda. When you're talking about leaving the ECHR, what you're not mentioning... Oh, this is about Kemi Badenoch saying she's going to leave the ECHR, or possibly. What you're not mentioning is the fact that it will never get through the party machine. They'll never allow it, and she'll be banging her head against a brick wall. That's Amanda in East Yorkshire. Thank you for that. Good morning, David. Isn't it about time the government injected a large dose of Doge into the NHS? Yes, great show. Thank you. That's Bill in Northumberland. And hi, this is Danny. Hi, David. Great show. 3 exclamation marks, no less. Please give a shout out to my better half, Kaylee. She's just graduated as a nurse and is due to start her new job in the next few weeks on a respiratory ward. I am so proud of her. Thank you. That's Danny in Silston in West Yorkshire. Yes, very many congratulations, Kaylee. Amazing. And I hope you enjoy the beginning of your clinical journey. Right, let's take a break. I'm just asking, remember, is 30 billion quid being chucked at the NHS the most effective use of public funds? The number 0344 499 1000. After the break, it's everyone's favourite entertainment journalist. Of course, Steve Denyer will be joining me from Virgin Radio, no less. That's all still to come. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is Talk 9:38 on Saturday, June the 7th. Hi, David. Every week is a surprise. This is Michelle. I would love you to be chairman of Reform UK. Could you please say a big hello to my lovely mother-in-law? Wow. Hello, lovely mother-in-law. Happy Saturday to you. Lots of other messages coming in. Also, we're talking about VCRs because today is a National VCR Day. Great show as usual. A VCR day, David. When our 4 children were young, they're now in their 40s, by the way, they would frequently sneak downstairs and put on The Sound of Music or Chitty Chitty Bang Bang on the VCR. It drove us nuts. That's Malcolm in Southampton. Well, let's talk to the man who knows all about VCRs. Of course, it is Steve Denyer, Virgin Radio presenter. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. David.
Now,
your VHS correspondent here.
Yes, did you have one?
Of course I did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I mean, you know, the very fact that back in the 80s, these things could hold 6 hours worth of stuff.
Yes.
And do you remember, you know, because you could record stuff, you could skip the ads. I mean, this was massive.
It was.
This was
so
massive.
Can I just show you mine? I think we've got pictures of my attic. Because I went up there yesterday. Look, I mean, these are all, actually, those are recordings of early television programmes I did about 300 years ago or thereabouts. And then you've also got, then the second picture, you've got all these films and stuff. But you're right. I remember what are you reading?
I'm just, so you got a beefer there.
Yeah.
One's got a beefer.
Well, I did a
The Survivors.
Oh, that was
guide.
To what?
I'm sure there's an El Dorado one. Wogan.
Wogan, you see.
Pebble Mill at 1.
Yeah, Pebble Mill at 1. So I used to work at BBC Birmingham,
Of course you did.
Yes, of course I did. So, and then there was a summer holiday programme I did in Ibiza.
Yes.
So do you remember Holiday?
Yes, I do. You
so
did
I did that. I went,
Amazing.
it was marvellous. You got paid to go away. It was fantastic.
Do you remember Blockbuster Video?
Yes, of course.
Because I missed those. So
That's where Dean got fined.
It was.
Yes, because he didn't take the tapes back.
And apparently so he hired a movie and got chewed up, Dean, from Blockbuster Video, and it got chewed up, and they used to charge you for the movie.
Well, we were laughing about this because, you see, it used to spew out all into the machine, didn't it? And you had to then wind it back. And actually, I remember recording In Bed with Madonna on VHS.
Yes, me too.
Yes, I think I've still got it.
They apparently last for 20 years, but if it's over 20 years, the magnetic... So if you've got one in the lot...
I have.
You might want to try... plug it in. Really funny story recently. My friend...
What doesn't work? You're saying the tapes don't work?
The tapes stopped working after 25 years. Okay. A friend of mine recently went onto an app because she wanted to start dating, meeting new people. And I said, how's the dating process going? She said, well, I've got this message from this guy. She said, I think this picture was taken ages ago because there was a Blockbuster Video behind him in the picture. So how long... They finished in about 92, 93.
Like
Blockbuster Video.
But I remember going down on a Friday night, say, and it would be a whole hoo-ha of going down, choosing a video. But it was kind of collegiate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That you'd all find it together.
So you didn't know if the movie, if you wanted the hot movie, you didn't know if it was out, you didn't know if there would be any copies in there.
Yes.
And also, you didn't know if the person before had rewound the video, because that was very unpolite,
annoying.
wasn't it? To finish the movie and not rewind the video for the next person.
Exactly, like that. So let me just throw this out. Which VHS, or which VHSs are you hoarding at home? And also, what's your favourite movie on VHS?
Because you know what, some movies were only released on VHS.
No.
There are collector's items.
Oh, is that right?
So let us know if you could still got some. Does it still work?
Yes.
I remember Mum taping TFI Friday for me because I wasn't going to be home.
On a video
And
cassette?
I got home and she taped News at 6 instead.
But that was the point. We were laughing earlier about that it was Piers who was saying that he kept setting the video and it recorded all the wrong stuff, and the reason was that it was either the cat or the dog was pressing the buttons on the front of it and changing the channel. I mean, they were absolutely hopeless.
And the other thing was, when you're going on a 2-week holiday, it was like taking an exam. You had to program when it started, when it finished, the channel for every single program.
Then I remember barcodes coming out, and you could then... I think there was a number you could put
That's
in.
Right, yeah.
Thank you, a Video Plus number. You're
That
right.
was
It was called a Video Plus number. And then that also was meant to be slightly better. And then you would record the film and miss the last bit because it just stopped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes they overran. Honestly, anyone who's used to Netflix doesn't know the excitement and indeed the pain that we went through in the late 80s, early 90s. But they were fun times, weren't they?
Yes, can I just say, hi, David, would you please wish my wife, Helen, a happy 50th anniversary? That's John in Market Drayton. Happy anniversary to you both. Have you got a jingle anymore? I'm a bit confused.
I think, I mean, if you want to play it, I think we're going to play it soon. I think so.
Are you 10 years to lie? Or
there's a new one.
Is there?
There is.
No, we want... Oh, we'll do it in a minute. We'll do it in a minute. Right. OK, so...
the main story everyone's talking about, David Beckham is finally going to be knighted. Now, this has been a 10-year campaign, if you like, because he's desperate for it. Forget the millions, forget the trophies. He's a real royalist, and apparently
he's chumps with the king.
He's kind of a mummy's boy, and it would really please his parents to get this. But there've been a few setbacks over the years. There've been, the emails with the dirty words, the naughty words. There was the fuss over.
Remind us about
Qatar
that.
and stuff
let's
like
go
that.
Back to the dirty words.
There were leaked emails and stuff said that basically the optics were bad. And then he had the Qatar thing, and people saying, well, you're taking money from them. The problems there. So it would seem now it's going to happen. And are we looking at Lord and Lady Bex? Lady Posh. It's got a ring to it, hasn't it? But she will indeed get a title.
Oh, I don't know.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Well...
The fallout, though...
But do they deserve that?
Well, it's really interesting. There are lots of people against these titles. He has been, a sports ambassador. Yeah. He's been a massive name in sport for, 30 years now? It's 30 years since Euro 96 next year. So he's put in, some would say, he's got the medals, he's got the trophies. he's got global fame. He's been an ambassador. They've used him around the world, haven't they, to champion. So it's an interesting argument, but I would understand people saying, oh, come on.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've grown up with him, and he has been a huge figure.
It's
for
actually
30
him
years.
I have less of a problem with. It's probably her.
Well, she will get it because of him.
Yeah, of course.
But she's not going to get it for her solo songs. she's getting it for,
no,
for
she
being
definitely
married
not.
with him.
In fact, we can
it's
take
nothing
it
to
away.
do with the music abilities, Dr.
In fact,
David.
she should take it away from her for those songs.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we think he is. I mean, they're also very close, aren't they? Because they don't they do Honey together? And then I believe that the Queen said something. Did you get the flowers I sent?
Well, that's what the king. So the king said last week.
Yeah.
Did you get your 50th gift for 50th birthday? Because he's just turned 50.
Yes.
And he
He
said,
had a
yes,
riotous party, didn't
thank you very much. So that they do
What do you
know
think
each
he
other.
got?
Do you think there's a WhatsApp group?
Yeah, there is.
You know, the king and him and
Do you think-
Posh.
What's it called?
I don't know.
Oh. Right. I wonder.
Bend it like.
But then I don't. And then the Queen said something to him about, oh, did you like whatever?
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
so
yes,
I don't know what the whatever is.
And the fallout continues with Brooklyn, because apparently Brooklyn said, well, I don't know anything about this. So they're really not speaking. I mean, I know we've been talking about this over weeks and weeks and weeks. Isn't it mad? You know, we said this last week. You can earn all the money and have all of the prestige and all the headlines and what have you, and yet that family is in turmoil. There's fallings out. They're not speaking to each other. It's families, isn't it? But there you go. I mean, I just wanted to recap on that.
Now, I know that you've got lots of other things that you want to talk about, and obviously that's the news, but I'm just wondering whether we should go to a break before we then come back
Let's
to
do
talk
that.
about all the rest of it. Lots of messages coming in. By the way, about the VHS, this is the Cat. I have all the Disney films on VHS, which is quite
Well, some of
interesting.
those are limited editions, so do check. Google Disney VHSs, and it will come up with about 6 titles that were apparently, there's some really special editions that were only released on VHS and never re-released on other formats. So look at that. You could possibly be sitting on thousands of pounds.
Wow, Michelle in Bristol is very impressed by my attic.
Yeah, and very orderly as well.
Well, yeah, she said. So Michelle says, I'm very impressed at your very tidy attic. I remember I had Ghost on VHS. Great film. It is a great film.
It's amazing.
A great show. That's Michelle in Bristol. Thank you very much. The last blockbuster actually closed on January the 12th, 2014, according to Steve. So thank you for that. Let's take a break. And then Mr. Daniel will be back with his delights or his entertainment news or whatever he's calling it
this week.
Whatever you're calling it this week. This is Weekend Breakfast. Good morning.
The question has always been, you know, how best to serve the country. I mean, I left UKIP to argue for a referendum. It was only because we got a referendum we were able to actually leave the European Union in the end. Nigel is very strong, very driven. Not everyone can keep up with him. I think you do tend to attract people from all sorts of walks of life when they're a new party. Not all of that works out.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back, 9:51, Saturday, June the 7th. Right, I can do it now. It's time for Denya's Delights.
Steve Denya's got the scoop. He's on the air with all the gossip, thrills, and that weekend flair. Turn it up, it's the Denya Delights. Tuned in, we're vibing, we're so excited.
Wow, that's
There have
something.
been boardroom meetings about this. People have been sacked.
I bet they have.
Production teams have been
Have they?
hired.
Yeah.
It's all been going on.
You had an ensemble singing that? did
Exactly,
you?
yes.
Yes.
Hashtag AI.
Hashtag AI. No, so did Dave do that?
He did.
No, he's so good.
Isn't he
He's so
good?
I mean, he's done all my jingles as well. Alex Phillips, good morning as well. You seem to have snuck in early.
Well, I did. So I just wanted to get in on the fun with my two
Right.
favourite men. I was like, whatever they're talking about, I'm in there.
Right, okay, let's talk about Doctor Who, because I sat through the most miserable episode, the last one.
Did you see it?
Yes, but I was like, come on, it was so boring.
Yeah.
And Doctor Who has just lost its way.
No one expected the Billie Piper thing at
No.
the end, which
But
I think is a
she can't
sensible
be
thing.
Doctor Who. Well, she can't be because she was the companion, so
Of course.
how do you come back as a Doctor?
Well, everyone was like, what?
Do you know
Weren't
what
they?
we're talking about?
Do you know, I don't even know why I came in early right now. I've never seen a single episode of Doctor Who. So,
Well, you know, so I used to watch it. So
what?
My VHSs, going back to the VHS, were
Yes.
full of, like, I had, was it Colin Baker,
Yes.
Peter Davidson,
Tom
Sylvester McCoy, Tom Baker. I think
Tom
Tom
Baker, best
Baker
one.
was the greatest Doctor Who.
Yeah, agreed.
And apparently he used to remain in character.
Yes,
so
and he
if
had
kids
marvellous
used to
voice.
go up to me, he'd perform and stuff like that. He also apparently likes his whiskey, which I love.
he?
I love that.
Yes, he was marvellous, actually. Anyway, so Billie Piper's going to be Doctor Who.
Yeah. And they
then-
reckon David Tennant's coming back
As
as well.
what?
This is what I've
He was
heard.
Doctor Who.
It's like they're just kind of. I think they're like either we revive it and we give people what they want, or it just disappears. Because
Well,
remember, it
it's
disappeared
done really
for 20
badly,
years,
hasn't
didn't
it?
It's done really badly. I mean, it's lost kind of so many viewers, so many. You've got to remember the core people who like Doctor Who are the older people, the people who've grown up
It's you
with
and me.
Doctor Who. You know,
Don't look at me.
like us.
I know. I don't. How did you not see Doctor Who?
There's so much I've never seen. I only just watched The Matrix for the first time the other day and The Bodyguard. I don't know. I was a geek, I guess. I didn't do popcorn. See, this is why I'm actually rubbish.
But
Sitting
it is
on
one
the
of those things, I get it.
entertainment sector. 'Cause
It's
I'm
really
like,
not
I
for
don't-
you, then.
I don't do entertainment. Let's talk politics.
Yeah, we'll come back onto that in a minute. Okay, so is that all we know about Doctor Who?
That's all we know at the moment.
When's the first one?
Listen, we don't have a date.
Right,
we don't have a date. I think they're just chucking out details, going, "Stay with us. It's fine.
But it's
we'll
got
repair
to
it."
stop being so woke.
Well, this is a massive criticism, isn't it?
Yes.
Of the last
Didn't
couple
they
of
have
seasons.
gender-neutral aliens?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think the
they
Daleks
ruined
were.
it for me, Alex.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
The Daleks
isn't it?
weren't gender neutral.
No, they weren't. They were still exterminating people left, right, and
Yes.
centre. I once met a red Dalek.
Yes.
They're the really bad ones, aren't they?
They're the warring
You have to
ones.
watch out
Yeah,
for
but
that.
you don't.
They're like fire ants.
They're fire ants.
Yeah.
And then you've got a gold Dalek who's the supreme leader.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are different ones. And then the grey and black ones are the basic Daleks.
Yes. I like Davros. Was it Davros?
I actually have a completely unverified, could be nonsense fact for you.
Go on.
I used to have a violin teacher when I was at school, and he knew a lot about Doctor Who, and he said that the concept of a Dalek was based upon an old Victorian ventilator on top of a school in Gloucester.
I don't think that's true, because my understanding...
rubbish, never mind.
The Dalek was based on the front of an underground train.
Really?
So with the orange lights, you look at an underground train. That's what I heard. That's what I heard.
I heard it
So
as those things, you know, like
face of an underground train.
those like weird ventilators. You know what I mean? With this sort of...
Well, maybe, maybe. Right. Anyway, that's enough about Doctor Who.
Okay.
Let's talk about the longest-running #1 this decade.
Yeah, this is Alex Warren and his song "Ordinary," which has been #1.
Do you know this?
No, I don't even know who else I laughed because I was waiting for it to be wet, wet, wet or something, and I realised
you might know
that I
it.
need to be Doctor Who for it to be wet,
You
wet,
might
wet.
know it if you heard it, but
Go on, then, sing it.
12 weeks at
Come on,
#1.
come on, sing it.
Moving
come
on. But we're kind of getting to Bryan Adams territory, aren't we? Because remember, Bryan
Well, that
Adams
went
was
on forever.
#1. That was
22
#1.
weeks.
I mean, my friend went to kind of Camp America in 1991, and it was before the internet and stuff, and he came back. He'd been away for 3.5 months. First thing he said to me at the airport, is Bryan Adams still at #1? And he was.
No!
He was.
Is that right?
He'd been #1 since June.
Okay, well, I've no idea who that song is.
So that is something, the longest running #1 in history, as he checks his notes, was Frankie Lane, I believe, 18 weeks at #1 in 1953. Then it's Bryan Adams. Then it's Love Is All Around, Wet, Wet, Wet. That was from Four Weddings.
It was a great movie.
Queen Bohemian Rhapsody only got 14 weeks.
Who did?
Queen Bohemian Rhapsody, only 14 weeks. And Ed Sheeran got also 14 weeks. So Alex Warren, 12. Apparently still streaming really well.
Do you know
and
who Alex
everybody's...
Warren is, David? Do you know that? You don't, do you?
There he is. Who's Alex Warren?
There he is.
Alex Warren. I'm old.
Do you know, when I was young, I always used to think, whatever happens, I'm always going to know what's in the charts. I'm always going to listen to radio.
Yeah.
I'm always going to watch Top of the Pops, which of course doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And then you get to that age where you suddenly think, I have no idea who anyone is.
That's so true, because I used to know all music, given that I ran a disco, and now with my...
Did you run a disco?
Yeah. With
Come to David's disco.
Yes.
When was that?
Oh, I've still got all the kit at home. But anyway, that's not the point. We'll have a disco at some point. And then basically now with my nephews and nieces, I've no idea what's going on. And you're right, so it happens overnight. Just very quickly, Steve, you're hosting a showbiz party that I hope we're coming to.
Yeah, Belinda Carlisle's birthday party. We're doing it on
showbiz.
August the 28th. We've just announced it. Tickets were on sale yesterday. Sophie Ellis Bextor's also going to be there. She's going to be singing. Kathy Valentine.
Your
Kathy
little
Valentine.
face is on there.
My little face. Kathy Valentine was in the Go-Go's. That was the big... Do you remember the girly group in America?
Nope.
Belinda Carlisle used to be in this group. They're huge. They were like bigger than the Bangles in the 80s.
Do you know the Go-Go's, Alex?
No, but I do remember Belinda Carlisle.
What's your favourite Belinda Carlisle song?
The Heaven,
Yes.
whatever it is, yeah.
Heaven is a place
on earth.
Yeah.
Which still
Leave a
gets...
light on. Leave a light on. It's like
Circle in the Sand.
Circle in the Sand.
In
That's
Too
good, very
Deep,
good.
In Too Deep, that was good.
That's a great song.
Yeah, I like that one.
Live Your Life, Be Free.
Live Your Life, Be Free, yes. I mean, I know that you go to LA and you see Belinda a lot, and you went
We're
to the
raising
Abbey
money
last time.
for Animal People Alliance, which is the charity that I'm part of.
Right.
And it helps kind of street dogs, street animals in Thailand, in
do
India.
they give you your free vaccinations and worming tablets?
Absolutely. I'm looking healthier than ever.
Look at you, I did better good job.
Can I just point out about VHSs, David and Steve? This is Mark in Selby. What about sorting the tracking out on your videos and snapping off the tab to prevent over-recording on the... Yes, I remember that. Do you remember that? So you took the tab out and then you couldn't record over it?
That's right. Did you put some sellotape over it or
Yes,
something? Yeah.
and then you could record again. Do you know what we're talking about?
Yeah. No,
Oh, you do?
I was. Don't worry, I was a VHS girl.
I once recorded. Do you remember The Word on Channel 4?
Who?
Friday night. They used to do this show where they were gonna show Madonna's "Justify My Love" video, and I taped it. And my mum found out that I taped it because the Daily Mail had said this is the rudest video. She confiscated the videotape from me, but I found it. It was at the back of the bathroom cabinet, so I used to play it in my own private time.
Steve,
I'm glad I told you about that.